Chapter 37:18, Sword Competition. Hei Shinjo summoned the chopping board and flew into the sky with a swoosh. She shouted to the people below, "Hey, you swordsmen, listen up. I'm here to pass the trial, not to kill you. If you chase me again, don't blame me for being rude." The cultivators were furious. Who was the bitch? You were the bitch. Therefore, they summoned their flying swords and flew to chase after Hei Shinjo. Seeing that the cultivators had caught up with them, Hei Shinjo quickly asked the chopping board to fly faster. The cultivators at the back did not give up. However, when Yunchujo flew into a mountain that looked like a sword, the cultivators stopped moving forward. They only threatened loudly, "Stop. The hidden sword peak is in front of us. It is the important place where the sect leader and the elders live." Hei Shinjo would not listen to their threats. She urged the chopping board to fly forward. Damn it. She did not know how to pass the 6th stage. Should she kill all of them? Wasn't it too difficult? The guy remembered that the 3rd stage could only be passed by killing the most powerful Upper Yuan Scarlet Flood Dragon. Was the 6th stage meant to kill the sect leader of the sect? When this fellow thought of this, she remembered that those people said that this was where the sect leader and elders were. Her eyes immediately lit up. As long as she killed that sect leader, would she be able to pass the 6th stage? Just as this fellow was thinking about it, she saw an old man practicing his sword in an empty space in the distance. However, his swordsmanship was so slow that it was as slow as a snail. Hei Shinjo could not help but burst out laughing. This was not practicing swordsmanship, it was a joke. The old man raised his head and saw Hei Shinjo. Surprise flashed across his face. He put away his sword and said to Hei Shinjo, "Which courtyard are you from? Don't you know that riding a sword is prohibited on this hidden sword peak? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. After saying this, the old man looked at the chopping board that Yunchujo was sitting on. Was this thing a sword? Yunchujo did not answer the old man's question. Instead, she giggled and said, "Old man, did you practice a sword technique just now? Isn't this too slow? This is really amusing." "Forget it, I don't have time to chat with you. Where is the sect leader of this sect? I have an important matter to look for him." The old man's face was slightly stiff, but he still said, "I am the sect leader of the Nameless Sword sect. Why are you looking for me?" TSK, I say, old man, do you still want to be shameless? Your sect was originally formed by a formation, and you actually have the nerve to call it the Nameless Sword sect? Hei Shinjo said as she landed on the ground. The old man's eyes flashed with confusion. Formed by a formation? Was this little girl not very smart? She looked quite smart. Yunchujo secretly observed the old man. If they were to fight head-on, she reckoned that she would not be the old man's match. It seemed that she could only outsmart him. Hei Xinjia's eyes fell on the sword in the old man's hand. She blinked and said, "Old man, do you dare to make a bet with me?" The old man replied indifferently, "What bet? Since you are the sect master of the Nameless Sword sect, your swordsmanship must be very good. Therefore, let's compete in swordsmanship, but we can't use spiritual power during the competition. Whoever loses will commit suicide on the spot. Do you dare to compete?" Hei Shinjo said arrogantly. The reason why this guy proposed such a bet was firstly because she released her sword intent without using her spiritual power when she dealt with the black tortoise last time. Secondly, this guy saw the old man practicing his swordsmanship so slowly just now, therefore, she felt that this old man's sword techniques were definitely not that good. Chapter 37:19 had lost miserably. Just as the old man was about to speak, a jade token on his waist began to tremble. After he sent his spiritual sense into it, he cast a thoughtful glance at Hei Shinjo. "Aren't you from the Nameless Sword sect? Which sect are you from?" Yunchujo curled her lips. Don't bother about this nonsense. I'm asking you, do you dare to compete with me?" The old man was so angry that he was amused. "Alright, since you want to compete with me, then let's do it." I'll let you have 3 moves. Hearing that, Yun Chujo immediately smiled with her eyes curved. I-oh. The person created by the array was really stupid. He even let her have 3 moves. She could kill him with 1 move. Hei Shinjo took out her big kitchen knife and said regretfully, "Old man, I really don't want to kill you because of your kind appearance. But if I don't kill you, I won't be able to pass the 6th stage. I'm also very helpless. This 9 death and 1 way to the heavens road is too fucking abnormal. It actually let me kill the sect leader of my own sect. Although it's just an illusion, it's still quite abnormal." When the old man heard Hei Xinjia's words, he was at a loss at first, but later, his expression became a bit strange. Just when he was about to ask a few more questions, Hei Xinjia's large kitchen knife had already arrived. Hei Shinjo did not even see how the old man moved when the old man had already turned behind her. Hei Xinjia's heart tightened. Damn, this old man's movement was really fast. Fortunately, she had proposed a bet. If they were to fight head-on, even if she had many trump cards, it would be useless. This fellow thought as he slashed twice, but he still could not touch the old man at all. The old man smiled. 3 moves have been completed. I won't let you win this time. Watch my sword. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. The old man's sword stabbed towards Yun Chujia's front heart. Hei Shinjo dodged the attack in a fluster. The old man cursed in his heart. Damn it, I saw the old man play his sword so slowly just now, how did it suddenly change so fast? The old man did not dare to be careless. He quickly brandished the chicken slaughtering sword technique. The old man had used it many times in the tunnel, so he was very familiar with it now. A sword intent that seemed to have substance immediately appeared around his body. The old man was really shocked. This little girl had already mastered a sword intent. Hei Shinjo saw that the old man was in a daze and could not help but feel proud. Old man, did you see that? Although I haven't entered the nameless sword sect yet, I have extraordinary talent. I can release sword intent when I was born. Don't you think it's infuriating? The old man's eyes twitched. He could release sword intent when he was born. How could you be so shameless? Hei Shinjo saw that the old man was in a daze. She secretly slashed at the old man with the large kitchen knife in her hand. She thought that she would succeed in 1 strike, but she didn't expect that the sword in the old man's hand only brushed lightly. The large kitchen knife in Hei Xinjia's hand slipped out of her hand. The kitchen knife fell to the ground with a clang, and the sword in the old man's hand was pressed against Hei Xinjia's throat. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been scared out of their wits when they encountered such a situation. However, Hei Shinjo said with a smile, "Old man, this doesn't count. I'm not ready yet. Let's start again." The corner of the old man's eyes twitched again, but he didn't object. He put away the sword and signaled Yun Chujo to pick up the kitchen knife and start again. Hei Shinjo gritted her teeth. It must have been because she did not pay attention. This time, she would definitely win. However, she lost the 2nd time. This guy's shameless request was repeated, but the old man still did not object. Thus, the 3rd, 4th, 5th time. They continued to compete for more than 20 times. Yes, Hei Shinjo lost. Chapter 3720 was all a misunderstanding. Hei Shinjo perfectly explained what it meant to be defeated again and again. This guy picked up his kitchen knife and was about to ask for another shameless battle when many people rushed over. Hei Shinjo took a closer look. Although she did not know most of the people, she still knew the 3 people with the hooked nose. This guy thought to himself, "Io, did they form a team to beat me up?" Hei Shinjo blinked her eyes. Just as she was about to escape, she heard the aquiline nose say fiercely, "Elder Wan, it's that wretched girl." She sneaked into the courtyard of the 9 Death Road to Heaven. She must be up to no good. And now she wants to assassinate the sect leader. She must be up to no good. Yun Chujia's face stiffened, and then she felt terrible. What did she mean by sneakily breaking into the courtyard of the Path of 9 Deaths and 1 Life? Could it be that she was not in the array now, but in the real Nameless Sword sect? Holy shit. The heavens wouldn't play with her like that, right? Normally, after passing the trial, shouldn't there be a hint? At least there should be someone to receive her. Why did she only go to a desolate courtyard after passing the trial? This fellow slowly recalled that it seemed like it had been a long time since anyone from the Nameless Sword sect had attempted the 9 to Death and 9 to Life path of ascension. Could it be that this was the reason why there was no one guarding the exit? Or could it be that the few disciples guarding the entrance did not come in to report that someone had attempted the trial? Only then did Hei Shinjo recall many strange things. She deliberately used her spiritual sense to hook up with the black bead and asked if this place was an illusion. The black bead trembled with disdain. The meaning was obvious. She despised Hei Shinjo for being an idiot. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Hei Shinjo could not care less about scolding the black bead. No matter what, she had caused a big disaster. She had beaten up her fellow disciples before she even entered the sect. And she had even scolded them for being swordsmen. The worst thing was that this old man was the real sect master, right? She had even shamelessly competed with the sect master more than 20 times with her sword techniques. And she even threatened to let the sect master commit suicide. Oh God, did she still have a way to live? Would she be beaten to death by the Nameless Sword sect? One had to admit that Hei Xinjia's mental fortitude was really good. This fellow quickly said with a surprised face, "What? This is actually the real Nameless Sword sect. Isn't it inside the Path of 9 Deaths and 1 Life? Oh God. Everyone, I'm here to challenge the Path of 9 Deaths and 1 Life. I've always thought that this was the test content of the 6th stage. Everyone, you're not lying to me, right? Is this really the Nameless Sword sect?" That hawk-nosed man snorted coldly. "Lie, continue to lie. 9 Deaths and 1 Life. With just you. If you can challenge the Path of 9 Deaths and 1 Life, then it would be like a red rain falling from the sky. Sect Master, Elders, this stinky girl is still scolding the people of our Nameless Sword sect as bitches. She's absolutely detestable. It's better to take her down and interrogate her properly." When Hei Shinjo heard the word swordsman, she could not help but rub her nose awkwardly. Damn it, she was going to die. If she knew that this was the real Nameless Sword sect, she would not have said anything about the swordsman. As expected, after hearing Hawk-Nosed's words, everyone looked at Hei Shinjo with dissatisfaction. Alright, no matter who was called a slut, they would still be dissatisfied, alright? Hei Shinjo laughed dryly. Misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding. Hawk-Nosed sneered. Misunderstanding? You dare to say that you didn't say that we are all bitches? Chapter 37:21 was a compliment. Hei Shinjo blinked her eyes and said righteously, "Yes, I meant that you are all swordsmen. But that is the sword of a treasured sword, not a lowly one. Besides, is it wrong to say that you are swordsmen? Isn't the highest level of swordsmanship the unity of swordsmen? This is a compliment to you. Everyone, is this how your family praises people?" The hooked nose snorted coldly. "Don't flatter me. No matter how you quibble, you can't cover up the fact that you are scheming against us." Hei Shinjo had never been a good-tempered person, especially after being the female emperor of Zephyr for so long. She had always been a person of her word. Now that the hooked nose was constantly rebuking her, a hint of coldness appeared in her eyes. There are sect masters, elders, and fellow disciples who are much stronger than you. Who do you think you are? Get out of here. The moment Yun Chujia's words left her mouth, the entire place fell silent. No one had expected this little girl to be so arrogant. Normally, when she was caught, shouldn't she be in fear and panic? Why was this little girl even more arrogant than them? Hawk-Nose's face alternated between red and white after being scolded. He was so angry that he was trembling. Just as he was about to speak, an old man next to him coughed. Hawk-Nose was unwilling to make a sound. That old man was Elder Wan from Hawk-Nose's mouth. He cupped his hands at the old man next to Yunchujo. Sect leader, this little girl's identity is obviously suspicious. Why don't I get someone to bring her to the discipline hall for interrogation? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. He Shinjo cursed in her heart. This old man also had an aquiline nose. He must be related to that aquiline nose. He was planning to use the public office to avenge his personal grudge. He Shinjo quickly said to the old man beside her, Sect Master. I'm wronged. I'm so wronged. I really came here after risking my life. If you don't believe me, the day I came in was the 6th day of the 8th month. You can ask the disciple on duty on that day if I'm telling the truth. Just as Yunchujo finished her sentence, the aquiline nose sneered and said, even if you're lying, you should at least say something reliable. The 6th day of the 8th month? It's only the 8th day of the 8th month today. Do you mean that you used 2 days to pass the heavenly path? You must be lying. Yunchujo was also stunned when she heard that. It had actually only been less than 2 days. It seemed that the time flow in the heavenly path was different from that outside. Otherwise, it wouldn't have only been 2 days. Yunchujo did not even glance at the aquiline nose, she just looked calmly at the sect master of the Nameless Sword sect and said, Sect Master, you are very observant. You will definitely not accuse a kind child like me. If you send someone to ask, they will naturally know if I am lying. Everyone, Master Ouyang of the Nameless Sword sect had already believed Yunchuji's words in his heart. This was because before Elder Wan and the others arrived, this little girl had said something about the path of 9 deaths and 1 life. It did not seem like she was lying. Therefore, Master Ouyang immediately sent someone to call over the disciples on duty on the 6th of August. While waiting for those disciples, He Xinjia's expression was very calm. She even had the leisure to recall the 20 or so times she had failed. She was puzzled in her heart. She couldn't see how brilliant this old man's swordsmanship was. Why did he beat her up so badly? As he thought, he subconsciously gestured with his hands the swordsmanship that the old man had just used. Chapter 37-22, I am the female emperor of Zephyr. Master Ouyang saw Yunchuji's actions from the corner of his eye and couldn't help but be shocked. He could naturally tell that Yunchujo was using the same sword technique that he had just used. Every time he fought with Yunchujo, the sword technique that he used was different. He didn't expect that even so, this little girl would actually remember it. And she even practiced it in a decent manner. This little girl was indeed a good material for practicing the sword. However, her personality was too impulsive, and she probably could not concentrate on practicing the sword techniques. Just as Master Ouyang was thinking about it, the few disciples guarding the gate on the 6th day of the 8th month were brought over. Those few people saw Yunchujo at a glance, and their faces could not help but reveal a shocked expression. This little girl had actually passed through the 9-to-1 life heavenly path. And she had come out in less than 2 days. How was this possible? When the crowd saw the expressions of the disciples, they didn't need to ask to know that Yunchujo was telling the truth. Sure enough, after asking, what they said was exactly the same as what Yunchujo said. She had indeed come through the 9-to-1 life heavenly path. Hawk-Nose did not expect Yunchujo to be telling the truth. When he thought of what he had said earlier, he could not help but feel a little embarrassed. He stole a glance at Elder Wan. Elder Wan said to Master Ouyang, Sect Master, although this little girl has indeed passed the path of ascending to heaven through a narrow escape, she is still a little too reckless. At the very least, she should have asked for the truth before making a move. I'm afraid that such an unruly person is not suitable for our Nameless Sword sect. Yunchujo had an innocent look on her face. This elder, at the exit of the path of 9 deaths and 1 life, there should at least be someone to receive her, right? There isn't a single person, and 3 fierce-looking people came up. How can I not panic? Moreover, I'm such a good-looking little girl, so of course I have to be vigilant. Otherwise, what if I get into danger? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks everyone. Alright, although this little girl is quite good looking, is it really alright to brag about herself like this? Master Ouyang coughed twice and said, since she has already passed through the path of 9 deaths and 1 life, there is no reason to reject her. Oh right, where are you from? What's your name? Master Ouyang felt that since Yun Chuzhou had already grasped a sword intent, there was a high chance that she was a descendant of an aristocratic family. However, since she was from an aristocratic family, why didn't she join the Nameless Sword sect through recommendation? Instead, she wanted to go through the extremely dangerous 9-to-1 life heavenly road. Yun Chuzhou straightened her back and said in a clear voice, my name is Yun Chuzhou. I'm from the southern continent of the towering sky continent. Southern continent? Everyone immediately cried out in surprise. She was actually from the southern continent. The 9-to-1 chance to ascend to heaven was extremely dangerous for the people of the northern continent. A little girl from the southern continent had actually passed the 9-to-1 chance to ascend to heaven. At this moment, someone widened his eyes in surprise. You said that your name is Yun Chuzhou. I remember that the female emperor of the Atlas Empire that was established not long ago in the southern continent was called Yun Chuzhou. Could it be that you are that female emperor of Zephyr? Yun Chuzhou did not expect that she was already so famous. She immediately pretended to be calm and nodded her head. Yes, I am the female emperor of the Atlas Empire. However, that is all in the past. I have already passed the throne to my cousin. I am now a commoner. Upon hearing Yun Chuzhou's words, everyone immediately exploded. The reason why they knew about the female emperor of Zephyr was firstly because her experience was too legendary. Secondly, they heard that the pavilion master of the 9 pavilions wanted to marry her. If she was not properly married, why did she come to their Nameless Sword sect? Chapter 37-23 had some outstanding points. Master Ouyang was also taken aback. He had naturally heard of this girl. Even though sects like his did not put the southern continent in their eyes. However, in the previous period, Tower Master Luochen of the 9-layered pavilion had paid a visit to their sections. Tower Master Luochen had first given them valuable gifts before he made his intentions clear. Tower Master Luochen sincerely apologized. He made it clear that the Li Hen Palace of the southern continent was indeed a member of the 9-layered pavilion, but this was all arranged by the previous Tower Masters. He had only learned about it recently, and after learning about it, he immediately withdrew his forces back to the northern continent. Then, with deep affection, he made it clear that the female emperor of Zephyr was his childhood sweetheart. He wanted to marry her and hoped that the other major forces would be able to accommodate him. In the end, he even promised that his 9-layered pavilion would absolutely not interfere in any matters of the southern continent. Although Tower Master Luchen's words were full of loopholes, the various major powers didn't want to fall out with the 9-layered pavilion on account of the gifts. In any case, the 9-layered pavilion had already promised that they wouldn't interfere in the matters of the southern continent, they could only turn a blind eye to it. To put it bluntly, what did the life and death of the southern continent have to do with them? As long as it didn't harm their interests, it was fine. However, why did the female emperor of Zephyr suddenly run to the northern continent? And she didn't even fear the dangers and went through the path of the Nameless Sword sect? While Master Ouyang was pondering, Elder Wan said with a cold tone, Yun Chuzhou, since you are already Tower Master Luchen's fiancé, why did you go through the path of the Nameless Sword sect? Are you deliberately trying to sow discord between the Nameless Sword sect and the 9-layered pavilion? When Elder Wan said this, everyone looked at Yun Chuzhou with unkind eyes. That's right, this female emperor of Zephyr wasn't waiting to be married in the southern continent. Why did she come to the Nameless Sword sect? Was she really harboring ill intentions? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Yun Chuzhou had a faint smile on her face as she said to Master Ouyang, Master Ouyang, do you want me to say it in public now? Master Ouyang was a shrewd old man, so he naturally understood the hidden meaning behind Yun Chuzhou's words. He immediately dismissed Hawk-Nosed and the others, leaving only those with a certain status. Yun Chujo also put away her frivolous appearance, and her entire aura suddenly changed. Even Master Ouyang could not help but feel shocked. No wonder this little girl became the female emperor of the towering Sky Empire. She was indeed somewhat outstanding. Lord Sect Master, everyone, I don't know what Tower Master Luochen told you. I will only tell you what I know. I believe that you have your own judgment of what is right and wrong, and where to go from here. Tower Master Luochen and I are old acquaintances. To be exact, we should be friends. However, for some unknown reason, he suddenly became Tower Master Luochen and had designs on me. I already have a fiancé, so I naturally won't marry him. Of course, this melodramatic plot has nothing to do with you. I'm just making my position clear. Now, let's talk about the crucial matters that are of vital interest to you. I believe that you all only recently learned that the Li-Hate Palace is the property of the 9 pavilions, right? TSK, the Li-Hate Palace has been established in the southern continent for thousands of years, but you all haven't heard of it at all. It can be seen that the 9 pavilions are really good at keeping secrets. What do you think the 9 pavilions' purpose is? To go to the southern continent to help others? The first thing that comes to your mind must be to plunder money. That's right, the Li Hen Palace did plunder a lot of money, but their ultimate purpose is definitely not this. Chapter 37:24 If there was no one left here, there would be someone left. Yun Chujo deliberately paused until everyone looked at her anxiously. Then she continued, I'm afraid that the ultimate goal of the 9 pavilions is not simple. Firstly, it is to pave the way for their ambitions. The structure of 1 pavilion, 2 islands, and 3 sects in the northern continent has been maintained for tens of thousands of years. The 9 pavilions have long had the ambition to unify the northern continent. Although the spiritual power of the people in the southern continent is not as high as that of the people in the northern continent, the advantage lies in the number of people. Moreover, with the southern continent, the 9-tiered pavilion had a way out. It could be said that they could attack or retreat. Secondly, the 9-tiered pavilion has set up many shrines in the southern continent. On the surface, it is to fool the people of the southern continent. However, I always feel that there are some unspeakable things going on here. However, I have never been able to find out their ultimate purpose. Yun Chujo said as she secretly observed the reactions of the people. When she saw the expressions of Master Ouyang and the others turn cold, she heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. It seemed that these words had hit the nail on the head. After knowing these 2 points, everyone naturally understood that the reason Tower Master Luochen had asked to marry me wasn't because he had deep feelings for me, but because he had his own considerations. What he valued was nothing more than my identity as the female emperor of Zephyr. He wanted to use me to control the southern continent. As for me, firstly, I wouldn't betray my fiancé. Secondly, I wouldn't let down my people. Thus, after thinking about it, I could only join a sect like the Nameless Sword sect that had sufficient strength to contend against the Li Hen Palace. Of course, I can also choose the other 4 factions, but according to my understanding, our Nameless Sword sect's strength is slightly higher than the other 4 factions. Moreover, we are a reputable sect, helping the weak to eliminate evil, and upholding justice, so, in the end, I chose our Nameless Sword sect. The above is the sequence of events. Since I didn't fear death and braved through a narrow escape, it is enough to express my determination. I mean, I won't marry Tower Master Luochen no matter what. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. If I cannot stay in the Nameless Sword sect, then I can only settle for the second best and join another sect. After all, I am the founding empress of the towering Sky Empire. I cannot let down my people. After Yun Chujo finished speaking, she stood there neither servile nor overbearing. Her attitude was very clear. If she did not stay here, Master Ouyang would have his own place. Master Ouyang was silent for a moment. He asked his disciple to bring Yun Chujo to the courtyard at the side to rest. Then, he began to discuss with the others. Elder Wan frowned, Sect Master, although that little girl is full of hype, there is no real evidence. Everything is just her speculation. Since that's the case, why do we have to offend the 9 pavilions for a so-called little girl? So it's better not to accept her. As soon as Elder Wan finished speaking, a few people chimed in, agreeing with Elder Wan's opinion. At this moment, a slightly plump elder said, "Sect Master, I think what that little girl said makes some sense. After so many years, we still don't know that the Li Hen Palace is the property of the 9-layered pavilion. It can be seen how deep the 9-layered pavilion's thoughts are. If it weren't for this little girl stirring up trouble, the 9-layered pavilion might really have taken over the southern continent. Although this little girl is no longer the female emperor of the towering Sky Empire, her prestige among the common people isn't low. Moreover, the new emperor is her cousin. She still has value, so we can't let Tower Master Luochen marry her. It's not impossible to let her join our sect." Elder Wan could not help but frown. This old thing always liked to disagree with him. It was really hateful. Chapter 37:25 Yunchuji's whereabouts. As expected, after hearing the chubby old man's words, a square-faced old man said, "I agree with Elder Gu. The incident at Chaotian's sect last time is enough to show that the 9-layered pavilion is up to something. Moreover, the previous Tower Master Luochen gave us gifts and begged. He is probably trying to paralyze us, so we can't let him succeed. Moreover, although that little girl is pretty, it's not to the extent of making Tower Master Luochen go through so much trouble. Therefore, he must be plotting against the southern continent behind her. Sect Master, to take a step back, if we don't take that little girl in, she will definitely seek refuge with a few other families. If the southern continent really has something amazing, we will lose the opportunity." The last sentence of the square-faced old man had clearly moved many people present. That's right, the 9 pavilions were so interested in the southern continent. There was a high chance that they were looking for something, and it must be something very important. This matter could not allow other forces to seize the initiative. Master Ouyang coughed and said, "It doesn't matter what identity Yun Chujio had in the past. What's important is that she has now passed the 9 deaths and 1 chance to ascend to Heaven Road. According to the rules that our Nameless Swords sect has set, as long as she has passed the 9 by 1 chance to ascend to Heaven Road, she will become a disciple of our Nameless Swords sect. Therefore, we have absolutely no reason to chase Yun Chujio out. Even if the 9-storied pavilion comes to demand an explanation, we can still hold our ground. Master is wise." Seeing that Master Ouyang had already made the decision, the crowd naturally wouldn't object to it and echoed one after another. Elder Wan also echoed a few sentences, then, he said, "Master, how do you plan to deal with this Yun Chujio? She made a mess of our Nameless Sword sect the moment she came, and she even dared to hurt you. She's really not a good person. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. Master Ouyang recalled Yun Chujie's previous actions and couldn't help but frown. Then according to what Elder Wan said, how should we deal with her? Elder Wan immediately said, "Sect Master, since this Yun Chujio has a temperamental character, then we should properly temper her character. The lower house's sword forging hall lacks a handyman. I think we should let her go there to temper her character first." Hearing Elder Wan's words, Elder Gu frowned. Elder Wan, the handyman of Sword Forging Hall, has always been a strong male disciple. If you let a delicate little girl like Yun Chujio go there, will she be able to withstand it? Elder Wan snorted coldly. We cultivators have to constantly temper ourselves. The conditions there are tough. Isn't it just right to temper Yun Chujie's character? Elder Gu wanted to say more, but Master Ouyang waved his hand. Then let Yun Chujio go to the sword forging hall of the lower house to be a servant. As for the future, we'll see how she performs. Seeing that Master Ouyang had already decided, Elder Gu could only keep quiet. Master Ouyang had someone bring Yun Chujio over and then told her about the arrangements. Yun Chujio only wanted to stay in the Nameless Sword sect. As for going to the sword forging hall, she didn't care at all. After all, she had even burned the fire girl, so what was there to be afraid of if she went to the sword forging hall? However, before this fellow left, he walked in front of Elder Wan and said with a sincere and repentant expression, "Elder Wan, please forgive me for my rude words earlier. I believe that with your high status, you will not lower yourself to my level and will not retaliate against me, right?" Elder Wan's expression was stiff as he squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth, "Of course not. Take care of yourself." Chapter 37-26 was really unlucky. Yun Chujo naturally knew that no matter what she said, this Elder Wan did not like her. Who asked her to let that small eagle nose suffer? However, at least after this, he could not do anything on the surface. As for those who came to play dirty, she did not believe that her little black lotus could not defeat him. The disciple who led Yun Chujo to the hall of sword forging did not bring Yun Chujo to the lower house. Instead, he brought her to the hall of miscellaneous affairs of the lower house. The disciple told the manager of the hall of miscellaneous affairs very succinctly, "This is a new disciple. The sect leader has arranged for her to enter the sword forging hall of your lower house." After the disciple left, Manager Yu of the hall of miscellaneous affairs sized up Yun Chujo. The speed at which news spread through the grapevine was very astonishing. Now, almost the entire nameless sword sect knew about Yun Chujo. Because it was difficult not to know. After all, there were too few people who could pass the 9-to-1 life heavenly ascension path. Moreover, this person was from the southern continent, which was even more unbelievable. Of course, what made everyone even more interested was that this little girl was actually the southern continent's Sky High Empire's female emperor of Zephyr. TSK, it was said that she was the person Tower Master Luochen was going to marry. This little girl must have lost her mind, right? Why didn't she obediently wait in the southern continent to be married, but instead, she asked for trouble and risked her life to ascend to heaven? Could it be that she didn't know that almost all the women in the northern continent wanted to marry Tower Master Luochen? She actually didn't cherish such an opportunity, she was really stupid. Manager Yu of the Miscellaneous Affairs Hall couldn't figure out the intentions of the higher-ups of the sect at the moment. He was puzzled. Although this little girl's spiritual power was a little low, but to be able to overcome the risk of her life to ascend to heaven, her aptitude should be pretty good. Why was she assigned to the sword forging hall? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Manager Yu was afraid of causing trouble. Just as he was about to find a light job for Yun Chujo, his identity jade tablet started to tremble. After Manager Yu used his spiritual sense to probe inside, his expression changed a few times. After putting down his identity jade tablet, he said to Yun Chujo, "After you receive the sect's resources, go to the sword forging hall number 9. Yun Chujo was so smart. Although Manager Yu's attitude didn't change much, she could feel the subtle changes. Someone must have said something to him, and it wasn't anything good. The number 9 sword forging hall was probably not a good place to go. However, this guy didn't say anything. It was useless even if he said it. He might as well go and see what was going on. Manager Yu did not send Yun Chujo off either. He asked her to take the sect map and go to number 9 sword forging hall on her own. Although He Xinjiu had the map, the lower house occupied a whole mountain peak. When this fellow found number 9 sword forging hall, it was already evening. While Yun Chujo was looking for the way, she also saw the other 8 sword forging halls. They all looked rather grand, but she did not expect number 9 sword forging hall to be so dilapidated. Yun Chujo shouted a few words at the door, but she only heard the sounds of something being forged inside. No one paid her any attention, so she simply pushed the door open and went in. However, she didn't know if it was because she pushed the door too hard or if the door of number 9 sword forging hall had been in disrepair for a long time. In short, with a push from He Xinjiu, the door of number 9 sword forging hall fell apart. He Xinjiu felt stifled in her heart. Did she have a bad relationship with the nameless sword sect? She had made a big mistake the moment she entered the sect, and now, she had smashed the door in a muddle. She had just arrived, and she was about to lose money. She was really unlucky. Chapter 37:27. Just as Yun Chujo was getting angry, she heard a furious voice. Where did this jinx come from? Get out! Don't delay my sword forging. Hei Shinjo followed the voice and saw a dark furnace in the courtyard. Four muscular disciples were smashing a red-hot sword with special hammers. A middle-aged man who was as thin as a hemp stood beside her and stared at her with an unfriendly expression. Obviously, the shout just now was made by this middle-aged man. The first thought that flashed through Hei Xinjia's mind was, "Io, this man is as thin as a monkey. I didn't expect his voice to be so loud." The middle-aged man saw that Yun Chujo did not move. His expression became even uglier. What are you still standing there for? Don't you know that the most taboo thing when forging a sword is to have a woman present? Get out of here quickly. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. When Yun Chujo heard the middle-aged man's words, she was stunned at first. Then, a mocking smile appeared on her face. The most taboo thing was to have a woman present. Was there no reason to look for her, so she had to be the scapegoat? When the middle-aged man saw that not only did Yun Chujo not leave, but also revealed a sarcastic smile, he immediately became angry from embarrassment. Are you deaf or stupid? Didn't you hear what I said? Why aren't you leaving? I'm sorry, the sect leader asked me to come, so I'm afraid I can only stay here. Yun Chujo said lightly. The middle-aged man frowned. The sect leader asked you to come? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Yun Chujo handed the document of the Hall of Miscellaneous Affairs to the middle-aged man, and then curiously looked at the four disciples smashing the sword billet. She silently made up her mind that she would not do the work that only a fool would do. After the middle-aged man saw the document, he said angrily, "This is really going too far. Although this sword forging hall doesn't have an explicit rule, but it has always been tacitly agreed that it doesn't want female servants. Is this Ufugue sending me a servant girl purely to disgust me?" Yun Chujo silently added this middle-aged man on the black account book in her heart. Disgust you? Damn it, sooner or later I will let you know what real disgust is. The middle-aged man cursed for a while, and then his eyes turned to Hei Shinjo. He said with a rather disdainful tone, "In the future, you will clean the sword in the backyard of the Hall of Forging Sword, and don't come to the front yard. In the future, you will enter the Hall of Forging Sword through the back door. Do you hear me?" Although Yun Chujo cursed the middle-aged man in her heart, she agreed obediently on the surface. The middle-aged man waved his hand impatiently. "Since you understand, hurry up and go to the backyard. Otherwise, this sword will be ruined. It's really bad luck to send a little girl here all of a sudden." Yun Chujo was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. She immediately walked to the backyard and saw a pile of swords piled up on the ground like a small hill. Some of them were broken in the middle, some of them were not sharp, and some of them were not in an orderly shape. In short, they were all defective. Yun Chujo felt that the middle-aged man did not ask her to clean up these defective swords. Therefore, she searched around the backyard and finally found a warehouse that contained the finished swords. There was not a lot of them. Besides, there was only some dust on them, so it was not difficult to clean them up. Yun Chujia's impression of the middle-aged man was a little better when she saw this. At least he did not specifically look for trouble to torture her. Yun Chujo did not wipe the swords immediately. Instead, she walked around the backyard, intending to find a room to make her own dormitory. Chapter 37:28. North, South, East, West. Yun Chujo discovered that besides this storeroom and a few rooms that were already occupied, there were also 2 empty rooms. After comparing them, she finally chose the room closest to the side. This way, it would be a little quieter if she was separated from the other dormitory by an empty room. When Yun Chujo was cleaning the room, she heard the middle-aged man's grumpy voice from outside. "Jinx, come out and eat." Yun Chujo finally managed to suppress the primal power in her heart. When she walked out of the house, she saw the middle-aged man and the 4 disciples sitting around the stone table. Yun Chujo glanced at the food on the stone table and could not help but twitch her lips. This nameless sword sect could be considered a big sect. Wasn't the food too bad? A big basin of steamed buns, a basin of stir-fried vegetables, and half a basin of egg flour soup. This was the dinner of 5 men. With just this meal, she did not know how the 4 disciples ate so well. However, she was new here, so it was naturally inappropriate for her to say anything. She picked up a steamed bun and did not eat any vegetables. She just chewed and swallowed it. Anyway, there was a lot of delicious food in her storage ring. She could eat it when she entered the house. When the middle-aged man saw that Yun Chujio had only eaten a steamed bun, he could not help but snort coldly. This girl is so delicate. Are you complaining that the food is not good? People who cultivate should not pay attention to the appetite. It is already good enough to be full. Yun Chujio silently chanted in her heart. She did not want to listen, she did not want to listen, she was a bastard. After dinner, Yun Chujio asked with a smile, "My name is Yun Chujio. May I know how to address you?" Seeing Yun Chujio's bright smile, the 4 disciples scratched their hair in embarrassment and said one after another, "Junior sister Yun, my name is Zhuge Dong. Zhuge Nan. Zhuge 11. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks Zhuge Bei." Yun Chujio, north, south, east, west, north. These 4 were brothers. They didn't look alike. Although this guy was very puzzled, he said with a smile on his face, "It's too strange to call junior sister Yun. You can just call me Little Jiu." The middle-aged man said in a bad mood, "What Little Jiu, Little Ten, hurry up and wash the dishes." Yun Chujio silently cursed this bastard a few times in her heart before she said with a smile, "Yes, I'll go wash the dishes now. But, how should I address you?" The middle-aged man snorted coldly, "My surname is Zhuge, just call me Hall Master." Yun Chujio's heart suddenly flashed with the light of gossip. Oh my, this skinny monkey also has the surname of Zhuge. Could it be that the north, south, east, and west are his sons? TSK, who would have thought that although this skinny monkey's physique was not that good, the son he gave birth to was light and strong. Could it be that he followed their mother? When the middle-aged man saw Yun Chujio standing there stupidly, he was even more disgusted. Not only did this girl have low spiritual power, but her brain was also not good. Yu Fugue had given such a trash to him purely to disgust him. How detestable. Seeing that Yun Chujio was a little absent-minded, Zhuge Dong coughed lightly. Only then did Yun Chujio come back to her senses and said eagerly, "Hall Master, you guys chat first. I'll go wash the dishes now." After saying that, Yun Chujio cleaned the dishes and went to the sink in the courtyard to wash the dishes. As she washed, she pricked up her ears to listen to the conversation of Hall Master Zhuge and the others. "Hall Master, I'm afraid we won't be able to complete the mission this month." Zhuge 11 sighed and said. Zhuge Bei said in a muffled voice, "It's not our fault. The quality of the ores given to us is so low. It's already very good that we can forge these finished products." Chapter 37-29 was furious. Zhuge Nan sighed, "Even though that's the case, those people from the sword pool won't care about these reasons. Our sect's resources this month will be pitifully low again." When Hall Master Zhuge heard their words, his face immediately darkened. "Enough. Stop talking about these useless things. If your skills are inferior to others, you have to admit that if you are a high-level sword forger, even if you are given low-quality ores, you can still forge a qualified sword." When the east, west, and north heard Hall Master Zhuge's words, they immediately fell silent. They all turned around and entered their respective rooms. Yun Chujio's opinion of Hall Master Zhuge was a little better. Although this person's words were a little harsh, his idea was worth praising. Blaming the heavens and blaming others would not solve the problem. It was better to train one's own skills. Yun Chujio washed the dishes and put them into her storage ring. In any case, she would take care of all the chores in the future. Yun Chujio greeted Hall Master Zhuge again before entering her dormitory to tidy up. When she was cleaning the door frame, she saw Hall Master Zhuge staring at the pile of defective products in a daze. His originally thin and weak body looked even more desolate under the sunset. Yun Chuzhou shook her head. It seemed that Hall Master Zhuge had a story. Could it be that his wife had run away with someone else? Just as this guy was secretly poking his imagination, Hall Master Zhuge noticed that someone was peeping at him. He turned around abruptly and saw He Xinjia's gossipy gaze. If an ordinary person was caught, it would definitely be very awkward. But what kind of person was He Xinjiu? She never knew what embarrassment was. This guy bared his little white teeth and said, "Hall Master, what are your orders? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. Hall Master Zhuge's face stiffened, and then he said in a bad mood, "Remember to pick up breakfast early tomorrow morning. Don't delay our sword forging." "Alright, don't worry. I promise to complete the mission," He Xinjiu said with a smile. Hall Master Zhuge wanted to scold her, but when he saw her bright smile, he couldn't bring himself to say it. He could only flick his sleeves and enter his room. Seeing Hall Master Zhuge enter the room, Yun Chuzhou was puzzled. Why did he have to go for a meal? Couldn't he just take it for 3 to 5 days? Anyway, it wouldn't break if he put it in his storage ring. It was really strange. This fellow busied himself for a while more before finally tidying up the house. Then, he took out a voice transmission talisman and sent a message to Yun Zhichen and Prime Minister Sima. Now that she had become a disciple of the Nameless Sword sect, the news of the change in the throne could be announced to the public, so as to prevent the 9 pavilions from stirring up any more trouble. Moreover, she was sure that once the news of her joining the Nameless Sword sect spread, the other 4 major powers in the northern continent would definitely be suspicious. They might very soon send people to the Nameless Sword sect to inquire about it. Master Ouyang was an old fox. For the sake of the Nameless Sword sect, he would definitely defame the 9 pavilions. At that time, the 9 pavilions would have even less energy to look for trouble with the towering Sky Empire. The more Yun Chuzhou thought about it, the more she felt that her move was very ingenious. Along with the kitten that had come up with an idea, she quickly rewarded it with 2 small dried fish. The kitten's heart was about to collapse at this moment. The reason it gave the stupid girl an idea was not to let her get out of the predicament, but to torture her to death. However, it seemed like it was throwing a stone at its own feet now. Not only did the stupid girl not lose her life, but she really joined the Nameless Sword sect. She was so angry that she took a glance. Chapter 37:30 Little Nine receives breakfast. However, on second thought, so what if the little brat joined the Nameless Sword sect? She was only a small handyman now, and she was even thrown into the poor number 9 sword forging hall. It was obvious that someone wanted to mess with her, and she might be killed one day. The kitten adjusted herself and began to eat the dried fish bitterly. The next morning, He Xinjiu finally got up. She made up her mind to get a few more days of breakfast today, so that she wouldn't have to get up early to get breakfast every day. Zhuge Dong was very careful. He was afraid that Yun Chuzhou wouldn't be able to find the canteen when she first arrived, so he took the initiative to get up early to accompany her. On the way, Yun Chuzhou asked curiously, "Senior brother Dong, why don't you guys get breakfast for a few more days?" Zhuge Dong sighed. "Of course we want to get breakfast for a few more days, but we haven't completed the task given by the sword pool every month, so the canteen only let us get a portion of a meal." Yun Chuzhou was stunned and asked casually, "The canteen has such a right? This isn't the sect's resources, why is it limited? Besides, isn't it good to save time by getting more at one time to forge a few more swords?" Hearing Yun Chuzhou's words, Zhuge Dong was stunned at first, then his face darkened. After a while, Zhuge Dong said self-deprecatingly, "Junior sister Yun, after hearing what you said, I suddenly realized that the canteen has been making things difficult for us. It's just a case of everyone pushing down the wall and adding insult to injury." Although Yun Chuzhou was very curious, she was new here, so it was not appropriate for her to ask too much. She could only say, "Senior brother Dong, why don't I try later? Even if I'm rejected, it doesn't matter. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Zhuge Dong tried to persuade her, but seeing that Yun Chuzhou insisted, he didn't say much. If it succeeded, it would naturally be a good thing. It would also prevent the little girl from getting up early every day to come and pick up breakfast. The two of them quickly arrived at the canteen. There weren't many people in the canteen to pick up food, and they were all here to pick up food. There weren't any tables or chairs set up for the meal. Yun Chuzhou looked around curiously. She saw that the handymen in the canteen should be very familiar with the people who came to pick up food, so they basically didn't ask anything. They directly handed the food that was already packed to the people who came to pick up food. Zhuge Dong brought Yun Chuzhou to the place where the food was picked up. The handyman looked at Yun Chuzhou curiously and then handed over a food box. Yun Chuzhou opened it curiously and saw that there was only a basin of steamed buns, a basin of porridge, and a plate of pickled vegetables in it. This guy suddenly felt a little unhappy because she had already caught a glimpse of many meat buns, egg custard, and other food in the canteen. Apparently, they were deliberately mistreating the number 9 sword forging hall. Yun Chuzhou pointed at the meat buns and egg custard with her claws and said, "Senior brother, can you give us some meat buns and egg custard?" The handyman of the canteen snorted coldly and said, "Your number 9 forging hall can't complete the mission every time. It's already good enough to have some food, but you still have the face to be picky. To tell you the truth, these food are not for you." Although Zhuge Dong was very angry, he was afraid that Yun Chuzhou would be at a disadvantage. He said in a low voice, "Junior sister Yun, forget it. Let's go." A faint smile appeared on Yun Chuzhou's face, and she ignored Zhuge Dong. Instead, she said to the handyman, "It's fine if you don't give it to us. Then can you give us more steamed buns and porridge? In this way, we can save some time and forge a few more swords." The expression on the handyman's face became even more contemptuous. He curled his lips and said, "You're really not afraid of the wind blowing your tongue out? Who doesn't know that the number 9 forging sword hall is a bunch of trash? No matter how much time we have, we can't complete the mission. Hurry up and take your food and leave. Otherwise, don't take it. Just starve." Chapter 37-31 Beating you up. The sound of the handyman was very loud. The disciples who came to collect their meals could not help but gather around, and their faces also looked like they were watching a show. Zhuge Dong's face flushed red. Although he was very angry in his heart, he was afraid that the matter would blow up, so he wanted to reach out and take the food box from the handyman's hand. Unexpectedly, the handyman actually took the food box back. With a contemptuous expression, he said, "Since you have the ability to be picky, then don't eat it. The food of our canteen is not for trash to eat." The veins on Zhuge Dong's forehead popped up, but when he remembered Hall Master Zhuge's usual restraint, he clenched his fist and said to Yun Chuzhou in a tense voice, "Junior sister Yun, forget it, let's go." Yun Chuzhou naturally did not lack this little bit of breakfast. Even if she did not come to the canteen to receive breakfast for 2 or 3 years, she would not be hungry. However, this canteen dog looked down on others. It was really too detestable. Yun Chuzhou was the most protective person. Although Hall Master Zhuge and the North, South, East, West, and North were not considered to be on the same side, after all, she was also a member of Forging Hall No. 9. Moreover, today was her first time coming to receive breakfast. If she was bullied like this, would she still be able to survive in the future? Yun Chuzhou blinked her eyes and said to Zhuge Dong with a faint smile, "All right, let's go." Zhuge Dong heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He was originally worried that junior sister Yun would act impulsively and cause trouble. He did not expect this little girl to have such a good temper. However, it was true. She had just entered the sect. How would she have the guts to provoke the people from the canteen? While Zhuge Dong was thinking, he saw Yun Chuzhou did not walk out of the canteen, but walked towards the door leading to the kitchen. Zhuge Dong did not react for a moment. When he regained his senses, Yun Chuzhou had already pushed the door open and walked in. After Yun Chuzhou entered the kitchen, she directly walked towards the window where the food was served. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. The handyman who was in charge of the food was stunned when he saw Yun Chujo. However, he shouted sternly, "This is the kitchen. You are not allowed to enter. Get out quickly." Yun Chujo curled her lips. "If you tell me to get out, I'll get out. How embarrassing would that be? Do you know why I'm here?" The handyman felt a little flustered for some reason. He said, What are you going to do?" "Beat you up." Hei Shinjo raised a chair beside her and threw it at the handyman. All the pots and pans that could be seen were thrown at the handyman. The handyman cursed as he threw it at Hei Shinjo, "You ignorant fool. What right do you have to treat No. 9 Forging Hall badly? Who gave you the audacity to act on your own? I don't believe that the sect is so poor that they would treat their disciples badly. You must be harboring evil intentions to tarnish the reputation of our nameless sword sect. Tell me, where did you come from?" The handyman was dumbfounded by Hei Xinjia's beating. Firstly, he did not expect Hei Shinjo to beat him up so easily. Secondly, to make it easier for him to get food, there were a bunch of food boxes and pots and pans beside him. He would not be able to dodge in time. Therefore, by the time he reacted, not only was he beaten black and blue, but he was also covered in hot kanji leaves. The people outside the canteen who were watching the commotion were all stunned. "Io, this little girl is too intrepid. She just wants to beat her up. Isn't she afraid of offending the canteen and not having any food in the future? Not only will she not have any food in the future, but she will definitely be punished for causing trouble in public. I think this little girl is simply courting death." Chapter 37-32. Even if she cries, she still has to be fed. Just as everyone was discussing, one of the disciples exclaimed, I know this little girl. Isn't she that Yun Chujo who caused such a ruckus yesterday? She's the female emperor of the southern continent's sky-high empire." Upon hearing this disciple's words, the gossipy light in everyone's eyes burned even more fiercely. What? Was this the legendary female emperor of Zephyr? TSK, this little girl was really extraordinary. She had just entered the sect and already beat up Elder Wan's grandson. She even scolded the members of the Nameless Sword sect for being swordsmen. Now, she even beat up the handyman in the canteen. She was courting death with all sorts of tricks. Zhuge Dong was scared silly by Hei Xinjia's valiance. When he heard everyone's discussion, he was even more dumbfounded. Junior sister Yun was the female emperor of Fenghua. And she even beat up Elder Wan's grandson yesterday. The four of them didn't have many disciples that they were on good terms with, so they didn't know anything about what happened yesterday. Therefore, when they heard about Hei Xinjia's identity and heroic deeds, they were instantly dumbfounded. He also immediately understood why Yun Chujo was assigned to their number 9 forging hall. Elder Wan's credit was definitely involved. Zhuge Dong's thoughts were interrupted by the screams of the handyman from the canteen. Only then did he rush into the kitchen and try to stop Yun Chujo. However, before he could stop her, the people in the kitchen had already surrounded Hei Shinjo. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. The handyman, who was almost knocked out by the beating, shouted in exasperation, "This is wrong. This is wrong. This bitch is trying to kill me. Go and find Manager Fan and ask him to make a decision for me." Zhuge Dong was blocked at the periphery by the people in the kitchen. He had no way to get close to Yun Chujo. He stomped his feet anxiously and could only take out his identity jade token to send a message to Hall Master Zhuge. Compared to Zhuge Dong, who was sweating profusely from anxiety, Hei Shinjo, who was surrounded, was very calm. She was very confident that unless she committed murder and arson, otherwise, that old fox, Master Ouyang, would not have chased her out of the Nameless Sword sect. The reason was simple. Now that she had entered the Nameless Sword sect, it was already a fact. The Nameless Sword sect was greedy, and they had already offended the 9 pavilions. Therefore, no matter how poisonous her Black Lotus was, the Nameless Sword sect would have to feed it with tears. Moreover, the other four factions would soon send people to investigate. At this juncture, the Nameless Sword sect naturally wouldn't do anything to her. At most, they would just face the wall and reflect on their mistakes. She didn't care about it at all. Moreover, a small handyman from the cafeteria actually openly mistreated an official disciple of the sword forging hall. No matter where she went, she was still reasonable. What was there to be afraid of? She did not know if the Nameless Sword sect did not usually have any major incidents, so any slight disturbance would attract a lot of people. In short, not long after, the cafeteria was filled with disciples who were watching the show. All of them were pointing excitedly. Zhuge Dong's expression was getting more and more anxious. Seeing that this matter was getting bigger and bigger, how was he going to end up like this? Beating a fellow disciple would definitely be punished. Moreover, junior sister Yun had offended Elder Wan yesterday, so the punishment might be even heavier. At this moment, an old man with a pair of triangular eyes walked into the kitchen of San Jiaoyan. The handyman who was beaten immediately cried out, "Manager Fan, you're finally here. This stinky girl barged into the kitchen and beat me up like this. You have to make a decision for me." Upon hearing the servant's words, Manager Fan's eyes fell on the calm He Xinjiu. He said coldly, "Who are you? Why did you beat up the servant of my canteen?" Yun Chujiu curled the corners of her lips. "I'm Yun Chujiu from number 9 Sword Forging Hall. As for why I beat up this arrogant thing, it's naturally because he deserves a beating." Chapter 37-33, Zhuge Dong in a difficult position. Neither Manager Fan nor the onlookers had expected Yun Chujiu to be so arrogant. She even bragged that the servant was asking for a beating. The servant was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He pointed at Yun Chujiu with his trembling hand. He said to Manager Fan, "Manager Fan, you heard it, right? She is too arrogant. She is rebelling." Manager Fan's face turned even gloomier. "Yun Chujiu, you beat up a servant of my canteen for no reason. According to the sect rules, you must be severely punished. But seeing that you have just joined the sect, as long as you sincerely apologize to Zhang Jun and compensate for the loss of the canteen, I will not report this matter to the discipline hall. Otherwise, the consequences will not be something you can bear." Hearing that, Zhuge Dong quickly squeezed to the front and tugged at Yun Chujiu's sleeve, motioning her to quickly apologize so that the matter would not blow up. Yun Chujiu still ignored him and smiled coldly at Manager Fan. "I apologize to him. Ha, what a joke. What right does a handyman from the canteen have to mistreat our number 9 sword forging hall? Not only is the food provided the worst, but he can only eat one meal at a time. Furthermore, they spoke rudely to us in public and kept saying things like trash. I'd like to ask Manager Fan, was it you who instigated all of this, or did he take matters into his own hands?" Manager Fan's expression froze. He did not expect that under his questioning, not only did this little girl not show any fear, she even made a false accusation. Now, the problem was difficult to solve. There were some things that could be done in private, but they could not be put on the table. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Even if number 9 Sword Forging Hall was publicly recognized as trash and a soft persimmon, he could not openly admit that he turned a blind eye to the handyman's actions. However, soon Manager Fan said gloomily, "Our canteen has mistreated your number 9 Sword Forging Hall? There's such a thing. Zhang Jun, tell me, is what Yun Chujiu said true?" Zhang Jun naturally knew what Manager Fan meant by his question. He immediately said with a face full of hatred, "Slander. This is a complete slander. When did I mistreat number 9 Sword Forging Hall? I have always treated everyone equally." After hearing Zhang Jun's words, Manager Fan looked at the anxious Zhuge Dong. "Zhuge Dong, you are a disciple of number 9 Sword Forging Hall. Tell me, has our canteen mistreated you?" Zhuge Dong did not expect Manager Fan to question him. When he saw the warning look in Manager Fan's eyes, his body was instantly drenched in cold sweat. He naturally knew the threat in Manager Fan's words. Instantly, his heart was filled with hatred and embarrassment. He knew that if he said that the canteen did not mistreat them, then Yun Chujia's crime of causing trouble would be confirmed. She would definitely be severely punished. However, if he told the truth, everyone knew that Manager Fan was on good terms with Manager Tian of the Sword Pool. Perhaps their days in the future would be even more difficult. What should they do? Manager Fan saw that Zhuge Dong kept wiping the cold sweat on his head and sneered in his heart. Zhuge Zhongyuan was no longer the same as before. Now, anyone could step on him. Even his 4 disciples were useless. Yun Chuzhou watched coldly from the side. She guessed Zhuge Dong's thoughts. She thought that if Zhuge Dong was intimidated by Manager Fan, she would not be surprised. After all, it seemed that the number 9 sword forging hall had submitted to Manager Fan for a long time. However, in the future, she would not bother with the number 9 sword forging hall anymore. This kind of mud was not worth her taking action. Chapter 37-34, Slander. The onlookers were also whispering among themselves. Most of them naturally knew that Yun Chuzhou was telling the truth, but they were also certain that Zhuge Dong did not dare to tell the truth. After all, the number 9 sword forging hall was famous for being a soft persimmon. Just as everyone was whispering among themselves, Zhuge Dong said with a slightly trembling but firm voice, "Junior sister Yun is right. This Zhang Jun has always treated our number 9 sword forging hall harshly. Breakfast has always been steamed buns and porridge, and lunch and dinner are always the same steamed buns and vegetables. We have never seen meat dishes before. Moreover, he was the one who insulted our number 9 sword forging hall first this morning. That's why junior sister Yun taught him a lesson." Zhuge Dong's words immediately attracted gasps. Oh my, is the sun rising from the north? Zhuge Dong actually dares to go against Manager Fan. Isn't he afraid that he won't be able to eat in the future? It's not a big deal that he won't be able to eat. The main thing is that Manager Fan is on good terms with Manager Tian from the Sword Pool. I think that number 9 sword forging hall's days will be even more difficult. When Zhuge Dong heard these people's words, his expression was not as nervous as before. Since he had already said it, it was too late for him to go back on his words. Besides, he had long been fed up with these cowards. If it were not for Hall Master Zhuge restraining them again and again, the 4 of them would have long wanted to beat up this dog who relied on his power. Yun Chuzhou curled the corners of her lips slightly. It seemed that Zhuge Dong was not too bad. At least he still had a conscience. Manager Fan's expression was not that good. However, his eyes quickly flashed with a hint of treachery as he sneered, "Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." "Thanks, I've lost my mind too. Zhuge Dong and you are both members of the number 9 sword forging hall. Naturally, we will speak up for you. Everyone, you are all witnesses. Can anyone tell me what happened just now?" Everyone present looked at each other. They were not stupid. Who would be stupid enough to testify for Yun Chuzhou? On the contrary, a few people who were on good terms with Zhang Jun spoke up one after another. "Manager Fan, that Yun Chuzhou and Zhuge Dong are just spouting nonsense. Zhang Jun was just helping them with their meals, and that Yun Chuzhou just went in and beat up Zhang Jun for no reason. How arrogant. Yes, we all saw it with our own eyes. It was clearly that Yun Chuzhou who started the trouble. Don't give her any chance to turn over a new leaf. Just send her straight to the discipline hall. That's right. This Yun Chuzhou is clearly not someone who knows her place. She has been stirring up trouble ever since she entered the sect. Just send her straight to the discipline hall." Zhuge Dong looked at the people who spoke in disbelief. His face was filled with anger and disappointment. He had always known that people were fair and square. However, he did not expect that they did not even have the basic right and wrong. They were actually lying through their teeth. It was really too hateful. Zhuge Dong looked at the people who did not speak, hoping that they could help to speak up for him. However, those people avoided his gaze. Clearly, they had no intention of helping him. Zhuge Dong could not help but smile bitterly. It seemed that junior sister Yun and he would have to be punished. If it really did not work out, then he would just take the blame on himself. After all, he was a man and his spiritual power was a few levels higher than junior sister Yun, he could also withstand it. Yun Chuzhou watched these clowns' performance coldly and still did not speak. Manager Fan saw that Zhuge Dong and Yun Chuzhou were both silent, he sneered, "All right, since you are so stubborn, then don't blame me for being merciless. Men, send them to the discipline hall. I believe the discipline hall will have a conclusion." Wait. A slightly irritable voice came from outside the crowd. Chapter 37-35, Hall Master Zhuge. Everyone turned to look at the person who had spoken. When they saw that it was Hall Master Zhuge, all of them revealed looks of disdain. So it was him. When Manager Fan saw Hall Master Zhuge, a look of disdain flashed across his eyes. He said coldly, "Hall Master Zhuge, I rarely see you coming out of the number 9 sword forging hall. Why are you willing to come out today?" When the crowd heard Manager Fan's words, they couldn't help but laugh out loud. Manager Fan's words made it seem like Zhuge Zhongyuan was a cowardly tortoise who didn't dare to show his face. However, it was also true. Ever since his accident, it seemed that he hadn't left the courtyard for many years. They only saw him once in a while. When Hall Master Zhuge heard the laughter of the crowd, his originally thin and weak body became even more desolate. The hands under his sleeves tightened, he cupped his hands towards Manager Fan. "Junior brother Fan, these two are useless. You must be laughing at them. I'll bring them back to teach them a lesson right now. Please give senior brother some face." After saying that, Hall Master Zhuge turned to Yun Chuzhou and Zhuge Dong and scolded, "Two useless things. Hurry up and get back to work." Of course, Zhuge Dong knew that Hall Master Zhuge was trying to save them in disguise. He immediately pulled Yun Chuzhou's sleeves and was about to leave when he heard Manager Fan sneering, "Hall Master Zhuge, you must be joking. I don't dare to climb up to you. You should call me Manager Fan. Besides, Yun Chuzhou and Zhuge Dong have already violated the sect rules. It's not like I can just let them go. Let's go to the discipline hall and make it clear." Yun Chuzhou heard Manager Fan's words and could not help but feel embarrassed for Hall Master Zhuge. This Manager Fan did not give him any face at all. Although he said it tactfully, the subtext was that Hall Master Zhuge was not worthy to be his senior brother. TSK. Hall Master Zhuge was too miserable. Sure enough, Hall Master Zhuge's face was livid, but he still suppressed his anger and said with some pleading, "Manager Fan, these two children were impulsive. If there's anything, can we discuss it in private? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, discuss in private." "I'm sorry, I've always followed the sect rules, so Hall Master Zhuge, it's better not to say anymore. Men, quickly send them to the discipline hall." Manager Fan said with a hidden meaning. Hall Master Zhuge was so angry that he was trembling. He pointed at Manager Fan but couldn't say a word. Yun Chuzhou pursed her lips in her heart. Was she full of energy when she scolded her jinx yesterday? Why did she become a doormat when she was outside? However, He Xinjiu was afraid that Hall Master Zhuge would get angry, therefore, she said with a smile, "Hall Master Zhuge, you don't need to talk nonsense with him. What's the point of talking to a person who can't speak human language? When we get to the discipline hall, we might not punish anyone. We don't need the people from your canteen to escort us. We just happen to be thinking of going to the discipline hall to sue your canteen. Well, just wait and see." The moment Yun Chuzhou's words left her mouth, everyone was stunned. At this time, this Yun Chuzhou still dared to speak rudely? Did she really not think it through? Hall Master Zhuge glared at her fiercely. He could not help but feel a little regretful in his heart. Yesterday, he should have directly sent this little girl back to the miscellaneous affairs hall to avoid causing such a disaster. He had initially hesitated whether he should come over, but thinking that this little girl was also venting her anger for the number 9 sword forging hall, he could not just stand by and watch her die. However, he did not expect that at this time. This little girl still kept provoking Manager Fan. She really knew how to be evil. While Hall Master Zhuge was gnashing his teeth in anger, he saw Yun Chujiu pulling on Zhuge Dong's sleeve and squeezing out of the crowd, walking towards the discipline hall. Chapter 37-36 Eating Buns. Those who were watching the show naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. They all followed behind Yun Chujiu and Zhuge Dong on their own initiative and rushed to the discipline hall. Hall Master Zhuge stomped his feet anxiously. This Yun Chujiu was really a troublemaker. He had only just heard that this Yun Chujiu had provoked Elder Wan's grandson when she had just entered the sect yesterday. Moreover, he had heard that she had even used a broken kitchen knife to compare swords with Master Ouyang. She was seeking death by playing tricks. Even though Hall Master Zhuge wished that the sword forging hall did not have Yun Chujiu, who was a troublemaker, he was still worried and hurriedly followed her. Manager Fan pursed his lips and immediately brought Zhang Jun, who had been beaten up, and a few other people from the canteen to the discipline hall. The Nameless Sword sect was divided into the upper, middle, and lower house. From the name, it could be seen that the lower house was the lowest level of existence and the lowest status in the entire Nameless Sword sect. The discipline hall did not belong to any of the houses, so its position was superior. It also avoided having any misgivings in the process of enforcing the law. Therefore, when ordinary people heard that they were being escorted to the discipline hall, they would feel apprehensive from the bottom of their hearts. The discipline hall was set at the foot of the mountain where the hidden sword peak was located, and it was quite a distance from the lower house. However, no one rode their swords to go there, and they all walked there obediently. He Xinjiu only knew that unless there was an emergency, they were not allowed to ride swords in the sect. As for the disciples who wanted to practice riding swords, the Nameless Sword sect had a special area for riding swords. Yun Chujiu took out a meat bun and handed it to Zhuge Dong as she walked. "Senior brother Dong, we have to do some physical work later. Let's fill our stomachs first." Zhuge Dong took the meat bun in a daze. "Junior sister Yun, where did you get the meat bun?" "When I was beating up that bastard just now, I conveniently took it. I even took a bowl of egg custard. Do you want a bowl? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks Zhuge Dong, this was the first time he heard that during a fight, one could even take a sheep and eat it. This junior sister Yun was really different from the rest. Zhuge Dong was holding a meat bun in his hand. For a moment, he did not know whether he should eat it or not. He Xinjiu did not care about the mess. As she walked, she ate while muttering, "Although those bastards in the canteen are not good people, this bun is still quite delicious." Zhuge Dong was also a little hungry. When he smelled the fragrance of the meat bun again, he gritted his teeth and ate the meat bun in his hand. Zhuge Dong was chewing on the meat buns in his mouth, but his eyes were a little red. These few years, they had been isolated and oppressed by Hall Master Zhuge. It had been a long time since they had tasted the taste of meat. If it weren't for the meat buns that this little girl had stolen, he would have almost forgotten the taste of meat. He had really fucking had enough. "Junior sister Yun, is there any more? Give me a few more." As Zhuge Dong said this, he felt that some of the shackles in his heart had also disappeared. Yun Chujiu immediately handed Zhuge Dong a plate of meat buns. The two of them ate as they walked. It didn't seem like they were going to the discipline hall to be interrogated. Instead, it seemed like they were on an outing. The onlookers who followed behind looked at each other in dismay. Didn't they say that Yun Chujiu was previously the female emperor of Zephyr Nation? Why did she look like a reincarnated hungry ghost? At this point in time, she was still thinking about eating. At this time, the sky was already bright, and more people gathered behind Yun Chujiu and Zhuge Dong. The male disciples were fine, but some female disciples couldn't help but gloat when they heard that Yun Chujiu had committed a crime. Ever since they heard about Yun Chujiu, they were very unhappy. Not to mention anything else, just the fact that she dared to reject Tower Master Luchen's marriage proposal was enough for these female disciples to resent her. Chapter 37:37 was in big trouble after eating a few meat buns. Zhuge Dong said to Yun Chujiu in a low voice, "Junior sister Yun, when we get to the discipline hall later, you can just push all the blame on me. Anyway, my skin is rough and my flesh is thick. It doesn't matter if I get punished." Yun Chujiu was really stunned. She did not expect Zhuge Dong to actually say such words. In her heart, she agreed with him a little more. She smiled faintly. "Senior brother Dong, as long as you listen to me, I promise we will be fine. Moreover, the canteen will not dare to mistreat us in the future." Zhuge Dong looked at Yun Chujiu suspiciously. He thought that this junior sister Yun was good in every way, but she was too naive. Now it was obvious that no one was willing to testify for them. They were all on Manager Fan's side. The discipline hall would definitely punish them, so why would they punish the canteen? Yun Chujiu saw Zhuge Dong's suspicious look and could not help but raise her eyebrows. She lowered her voice, "I was fine even when I used the big kitchen knife to compete with the sect leader yesterday. What's the big deal about beating up a little servant? Just wait and see." Hearing her words, Zhuge Dong felt a little relieved. It was true. Hearing those people talk about how little sister Jiu beat up Elder Wan's grandson yesterday and even called everyone a swordsman. In the end, nothing happened, right? Otherwise, he would have believed her. Finally, everyone arrived at the discipline hall. In order to make it convenient for everyone to watch, the discipline hall had built a small square in front of the discipline hall. Usually, cases were interrogated in the square, and disciples were not prohibited from watching. At the front of the square were two awe-inspiring stone heichi, which symbolized fairness and justice. It had a sense of righteousness. On the east side of the stone heichi, there was a big drum next to it. It was probably used to justify wrongs. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Yun Chujiu looked at the two stone heichi and wondered if these two stone heichi had any intelligence. Then she remembered that there were many big stones in her storage ring. Unfortunately, she hadn't figured out how to make them into puppets. This guy's thoughts were suddenly out of control like a wild horse that had run out of control. In a daze, he walked to the front of the square surrounded by people. Seeing Yun Chujiu's indifferent expression, Zhuge Dong thought that she was scared. He sighed in his heart. She was just a little girl. No matter how powerful she was, wasn't she scared now? Just as Zhuge Dong was thinking about it, Yun Chujiu had already regained her senses. This fellow jumped in front of the big drum on the east side, picked up the drumstick, and started knocking on it. Zhuge Dong's head buzzed. He immediately felt that his whole body was in a bad state. That big drum was not knocked on casually. It was a shocking drum used to warn the Nameless Sword sect when something major happened. There were a total of 77 to 49 such big drums in the Nameless Sword sect. As long as one of the big drums was knocked on, all the big drums would automatically make a sound. As expected, after He Xinjiu knocked on that big drum, the entire Nameless Sword sect was filled with countless drumming sounds. The entire Nameless Sword sect was in a mess. Zhuge Dong's legs went limp, and he collapsed onto the ground. It was over. Although he would be punished for beating up his fellow disciples, it was nothing more than physical pain. But now, junior sister Yun had caused a huge disaster, and it was under the watchful eyes of everyone. Even if she wanted to quibble, it was impossible. It was highly likely that she would be expelled from the sect. He Xinjiu did not know that she had already caused a huge disaster. This fellow was still puzzled. This big drum was quite fun. Why was there an echo after a few knocks? Chapter 37-38 was dedicated to stirring up trouble in the sky. He Xinjiu found it amusing, but the people of the Nameless Sword sect were in trouble. They did not know what kind of life and death event had happened. They scrambled out of their courtyards and ran towards the square of the hidden sword peak. Even some of the disciples who were in closed-door cultivation hurriedly left their courtyards. What a joke! The sect had a life-and-death event. What was the point of being in closed-door cultivation? At this moment, they couldn't care less about whether they should be allowed to ride their swords or not. They could only see the sky flashing with light. Some of them were riding swords, while others were riding flying demonic beasts. They were all flying towards the large square halfway up the hidden sword peak. When Master Ouyang heard the heaven-shaking drum sound, he was so frightened that the teacup in his hand immediately fell to the ground. On one hand, he ordered people to activate the sect protection array, and on the other hand, he asked the higher-ups of the sect what had happened. Soon, the matter was found out. Master Ouyang was so angry that he almost died. What? Was it that Yun Chujiu who knocked on the drum by mistake? Was she idle? She knocked on the heaven-shaking drum by mistake on the second day after entering the sect. What on earth was she trying to do? In a fit of anger, Master Ouyang directly rushed to the discipline hall with the higher-ups of the sect in an aggressive manner. At this moment, Zhuge Dong almost cried and told He Xinjiu about the heaven-shaking drum. This fellow finally knew that he had caused trouble. Yes, he had caused a big trouble. Damn it, this wasn't her fault. There wasn't such a rule in the sect rules. Moreover, such an important drum, why did she have to put up a sign? She didn't even think about it. Who would come to the discipline hall to play with the drum? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Zhuge Dong's intestines were filled with regret. If he had known earlier, he would have stopped her just now. No, he shouldn't have let her come to pick up breakfast today. He should have left her in the backyard like an ancestor. Unfortunately, it was too late to say anything now. No one could save junior sister Yun. Her expulsion from the sect was probably a light punishment. Perhaps, before she was expelled from the sect, she would receive a heavy punishment. Those who were watching the show were also dumbfounded. Although they were just watching the show, with such a big incident, the sect would not vent their anger on them later, right? After all, they had watched Yun Chujiu ring the heaven-shaking drum without stopping her, allowing her to cause a big disaster. It wasn't that they didn't want to stop her, but they really didn't expect Yun Chujiu to be crazy enough to ring the heaven-shaking drum. Was there something wrong with her brain? As Hall Master Zhuge, Manager Fan, and the others left a while later, they rushed to the discipline hall at this time. After hearing everyone's discussion, Manager Fan couldn't help but feel delighted. This Yun Chujiu was really courting death. This time, he didn't have to make a move, but she would also have to get out of the nameless sword sect. Hall Master Zhuge's mind went blank. This Yun Chujiu really didn't stir up any trouble on the ground, but only caused trouble in the sky. It was over. This little girl was considered crippled. She had entered the sect yesterday and was expelled from the sect today. This could be considered as setting a new record for the fastest time for the nameless sword sect to be expelled from the sect. Hall Master Zhuge laughed bitterly. Even if he wanted to, he wouldn't be able to help now. Moreover, there was a high chance that their number 9 sword forging hall would be implicated. However, since they had already fallen to such a state, it didn't matter anymore. At this moment, more and more disciples who knew the truth rushed over. Because they were too rushed, some were only wearing one shoe, some were wearing their clothes inside out, and some had disheveled hair. If these people weren't worried that they were in the discipline hall, they would have rushed in front of He Xinjiu and beaten her to death. Chapter 37-39 Public enemy of the sect. He Xinjiu looked at the angry crowd with a guilty conscience. She seemed to be able to see the black resentment on everyone's heads. She was done for. This time, she was really done for. She had already offended a portion of the people by scolding the swordsman yesterday. Today, it seemed that she had offended all of them. How was she going to survive in the future? However, the most important thing now was how to survive in front of her. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to talk about the future. According to the degree of public anger, she might very well be expelled from the nameless sword sect. At this moment, Master Ouyang walked in with the higher-ups of the sect with a gloomy expression. Their eyes were like knives as they looked at He Xinjiu. Especially when they saw that He Xinjiu was still holding the heaven-shaking drum in her hand, they wished that they could slap this little girl to death. When the furious disciples saw Master Ouyang and the others coming over, they shouted excitedly, "Master, we demand that Yun Chuzhou be severely punished. This Yun Chuzhou is too hateful. Yesterday, she called us swordsmen, and today, she beat the heaven-shaking drum for no reason. She is here to cause trouble. Yes. She has committed a heinous crime. She is not worthy to be a disciple of the Nameless Sword sect. She should be expelled from the sect." In the end, everyone's slogan became more uniform. Almost the entire Hidden Sword Peak resounded with one slogan, Yun Chuzhou. Get out of the Nameless Sword sect. He Xinjiu looked at the scene in front of her. She was quite impressed by herself. Her physique that caused trouble was really unique. Wasn't she just knocking on that broken drum a few times out of curiosity? How did she become the public enemy of the entire sect? Master Ouyang's head was buzzing. He shouldn't have coveted the non-existent secret of the southern continent and left this troublemaker behind. Now, this little girl had become a hot potato that gave people a headache. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, the Nameless Swords sect had already offended the 9 pavilions by leaving her behind. If they were to expel her from the sect just like that, wouldn't it be futile? Moreover, the other 4 forces were suspicious. Perhaps this little girl would be snatched away by other sects as soon as she was expelled. At that time, their Nameless Swords sect would become the laughingstock of everyone. But if they didn't expel her, this little girl was too good at stirring up trouble. She had just entered the sect for 2 days, and she had already stirred up trouble. Would the sect still be able to calm down in the future? Moreover, the most important thing was that she had already aroused public anger. If they didn't expel her from the sect, these disciples would probably be dissatisfied. Just as Master Ouyang was having a headache, he heard Yun Chuzhou shout, "Master Ouyang! You're finally here. Something big has happened to our sect. Otherwise, I wouldn't have struck this heaven-shaking drum." Before Master Ouyang could say anything, those angry disciples shouted, "Nonsense! What nonsense? Nothing happened to our sect." "That's right, Yun Chuzhou, don't quibble. You were obviously the one who deliberately knocked on the sky-shaking drum to fool us. You're so hateful. Master, this Yun Chuzhou is full of lies. Stop talking nonsense with her and quickly expel her from the sect." If it were any other person who had encountered such a scene, their legs would have turned to jelly. It was a pity that He Xinjiu had seen such a scene too many times. She treated these angry disciples as cabbages. If they were willing to shout, then shout. Anyway, they weren't the ones who made the final decision in the end. Sure enough, Master Ouyang waved his hand, and the crowd instantly quieted down. Yun Chuzhou sighed in her heart. Not long ago, she was also like this in the southern continent. It was a pity that she had turned into a fleeting cloud. She really missed it. Chapter 3740, Something Big Happened. Master Ouyang saw Yun's calm expression and thought to himself, could there really be something else going on? Yun Chuzhou, you said that because something big happened to the sect, the heaven-shaking drum was sounded? Then tell me, what exactly happened to the sect? Yun Chuzhou said with a serious expression, it's a matter that concerns the life and death of our Nameless Sword sect. Otherwise, I wouldn't have sounded the heaven-shaking drum. Zhuge Dong was on the verge of tears. Junior sister Yun, you've already caused a huge disaster, so stop spouting nonsense. And it's a matter that concerns the life and death of the Nameless Sword sect? It's not a big deal. Everyone present also felt that Yun Chuzhou was spouting nonsense, but Master Ouyang didn't say anything. They wanted to hear how Yun Chuzhou would justify this lie. Master Ouyang gave Yun Chuzhou a deep look. A major matter that concerns the life and death of the Nameless Sword sect? Then tell us what it is. Yun Chujo said calmly, Master, if someone in the sect instigates the servants to take revenge for personal grudges and mistreat fellow disciples, is this considered a major matter? Master Ouyang frowned. What kind of major matter was this? It was nothing more than a trivial matter. Everyone curled their lips. This Yun Chujo was really deliberately mystifying. How could this be considered a big deal? Those who knew about the conflict between Yun Chujo and Manager Fan felt that it was even more laughable in their hearts. This Yun Chujo's brain was not good, right? Could it be that she thought that the little conflict between her and Manager Fan was considered a big deal? Yun Chujo slightly raised her voice and continued, Sect Master, if someone in the sect used their authority to incite the disciples to create trouble and ruin the sect's culture, is it considered a big deal? Master Ouyang frowned. Although this matter was more serious than what he had just said, it couldn't be considered a big deal that concerned the life and death of the sect, right? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. The onlookers also sneered. This Yun Chujo was simply deliberately mystifying. There was no big deal at all. At this time, Yun Chujo raised her voice again, Master, if someone has designs on the sword pool, do you think this is a big deal that concerns the life and death of the sect? Master Ouyang's expression turned cold. What? Someone has designs on the sword pool? Of course, this is a big matter. Who dares to have designs on the sword pool? Master Ouyang was not the only one who was shocked. Almost everyone present was stunned. The sword pool could be said to be the foundation of the Nameless Sword sect. If someone had designs on the sword pool, it would be challenging the bottom line of the Nameless Sword sect. Who was so daring? Everyone looked at Yun Chujo, waiting for her to reveal the person who had designs on the sword pool. The corners of Yun Chujo's mouth curled up slightly. Sect Master, as for who has designs on the sword pool, little Yen Wei, have just entered the sect, so I don't know much. However, I can provide you with 2 small shrimps. If you follow the small shrimps and investigate, you will definitely catch a big fish. Master Ouyang's expression changed and he said coldly, Who are the 2 small shrimps you mentioned? Yun Chujo glanced at the crowd and said slowly and confidently, Manager Fan of the Lower Academy's canteen and Manager Tian of the sword pool. Once Yun Chujo said this, the scene was silent at first, and then it exploded. Zhuge Dong almost fainted. Junior Sister Yun, although your idea is good, aren't you talking nonsense? Putting aside Manager Tian, that Manager Fan is just a manager of the Lower Academy's canteen. How could he have any designs on the sword pool? It's over. Now Junior Sister Little Nine has another crime of slandering her fellow disciples. It's simply a heinous crime. Chapter 3741, The Cornerstone of the Nameless Sword sect. Very quickly, 2 people, sweating profusely, squeezed to the front. They were Manager Fan of the lower house's canteen and Manager Tian of the sword pool. Sect Master, you are being wronged. This is really a disaster from the heavens. I have always been conscientious and conscientious. How did I become someone who has designs on the sword pool? The one who spoke was a thin and lean middle-aged man. It was Manager Tian of the sword pool. Manager Fan from the canteen also had an aggrieved and angry look on his face. Sect Master, this Yun Chujo is obviously taking revenge for personal vendettas. In the morning, she beat up the servants of the lower house's canteen for no reason, so I planned to come to the discipline hall to report her. She must be taking revenge on me, so she framed me. Master Ouyang frowned even more. What? This Yun Chujo even beat up the servants of the canteen this morning? She really didn't have a moment of peace. However, the most important thing now was the matter of the sword pool. Anything like beating up fellow disciples was considered a trivial matter. Master Ouyang pointed at Manager Fan and Manager Tian. Yun Chujo, do you think these 2 people are the ones who have designs on the sword pool? Yun Chujo pointed at Manager Tian. I don't know him. If he's Manager Tian of the sword pool, then it's him. Everyone, you don't even know Manager Tian, yet you dare to say that he has designs on the sword pool? isn't your framing too insincere? Master Ouyang's face immediately darkened. Then tell me, how did they have designs on the sword pool? If there's even half a lie, then they will be severely punished. As Master Ouyang spoke, he released a faint pressure towards Yun Chuzhou. Unexpectedly, that little girl was fine. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Just as Master Ouyang was feeling a little puzzled, he heard Yun Chuzhou clearly say, I am a person with a righteous conscience. Naturally, I will not malign good people. Although I have just entered the sect, I also know the importance of the sword pool to our sect. The key to maintaining the sword pool is to have enough precious swords. That is why our Nameless Swords sect has set up 27 sword forging halls, big and small. Master Ouyang, am I right? Master Ouyang nodded. Yun Chuzhou was right. The Nameless Swords sect had set up 9 sword forging halls in the upper, middle, and lower courts, adding up to a total of 27 sword forging halls. Seeing Master Ouyang nod, Yun Chuzhou continued, that's why these 27 sword forging halls can be said to be the cornerstone of our Nameless Swords sect. Some people who want to take advantage of the sword pool have adopted a roundabout strategy. They don't dare to tamper with the sword pool directly. Instead, they have taken advantage of the sword forging hall. At this moment, everyone's thoughts were led by Yun Chuzhou. They all felt that there was no problem with this reasoning and agreed with Yun Chuzhou's statement that attacking the sword forging hall was attacking the sword pool. However, Manager Tian and Manager Fan had an ominous premonition in their hearts. They already knew what Yun Chuzhou wanted to say next, which was to bring the blame to them. Beads of sweat immediately appeared on their foreheads. They wanted to explain, but they didn't know how Yun Chuzhou would deduct the charges against them, so they had no way to explain. They could only glare at Yun Chuzhou and wait for her to continue. Yun Chuzhou's crisp voice sounded again. Manager Tian, who is in charge of distributing the forging sword ores, has given the number 9 forging sword hall unqualified ores for 5 years in a row. As a result, the number 9 forging sword hall hasn't handed over enough precious swords in 1 month in the past 5 years. Based on the calculation of 20 precious swords being handed over in a month, 5 years would be 1,200 precious swords. 1,200 precious swords would be the output of 3 forging sword halls in a year. In other words, Manager Tian killed 3 forging sword halls effortlessly. This little shrimp is really amazing. Chapter 3742, More than 10,000 swords. Just as Manager Tian was about to defend himself, Yun Chuzhou looked at him with a cold smile. Don't be in a hurry to defend yourself. I haven't finished speaking yet. It's not too late for you to defend yourself after I've finished speaking. Everyone wanted to hear Yun Chuzhou continue, so no one spoke up to support Manager Tian. They were all waiting for Yun Chuzhou to continue. Yun Chuzhou sighed and continued, this is only the superficial data. The far-reaching impact of this matter is even more frightening. As the number 9 forging sword hall had not been able to complete the mission, the other forging sword halls were already confident. Since the number 9 forging sword hall was at the bottom, they naturally did not feel any sense of urgency. It was normal for them to forge 3 to 5 swords less in a month. 1 sword forging hall would produce 5 swords less, and 26 sword forging halls would produce 7,800 swords in 5 years. Adding up the previous losses, it would be close to 10,000 swords. The sword pool suddenly lost 10,000 swords. How big of an impact is that? Don't you feel that these 5 years' cultivation speed isn't as fast as before? Don't you feel that it's not as easy to comprehend the sword intent as before? It's all because of the loss of 10,000 swords. People were often willing to find excuses for their own failures. Right now, their focus was not on whether Manager Tian was a spy or not. Their focus was on the loss of 10,000 swords in the sword pool. What kind of concept was 10,000 swords? The total number of swords forged by the 27 sword forging halls in a year was only over 10,000. This was equivalent to the sword forging hall not releasing any swords into the sword pool for a year. No wonder their cultivation progress was so slow. No wonder very few people had comprehended sword intent. It was all caused by Manager Tian. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Everyone's anger was immediately transferred to Manager Tian. There was no doubt that this Manager Tian was a spy. Otherwise, why would he do this? Manager Tian was so frightened by everyone's angry gaze that his legs went weak and he immediately knelt on the ground. He was completely frightened. However, from the looks of it, he was guilty. That was admitting that he was a spy. Otherwise, why didn't Yun Chuzhou panic just now? It meant that he was not guilty. At this moment, Yun Chuzhou continued, Manager Tian is naturally guilty of a great crime. However, his accomplice, Manager Fan of the Lower Academy's canteen, is also not a good person. For 5 years, Manager Fan had been depriving the No. 9 Sword Forging Hall of their food. The poor hall master and senior brothers had not tasted the taste of meat for 5 years, otherwise, senior brother Zhuge Dong would not have been so eager to eat meat buns on the road so early in the morning. Think about it, forging a sword was a physical labor. If they could not even eat meat, how could they forge a good sword? What was worse was that Manager Fan didn't allow them to get a few more meals at a time. They had to go to the canteen for meals. How much time did they have to waste on forging swords? Conservatively speaking, they should be able to forge 5 swords in a month's time to get their meals, right? In addition to the swords forged because they didn't have enough to eat, there should be at least 1,000 swords. This was nothing. This Manager Fan was very sinister. In the morning, he deliberately let everyone be false witnesses to frame the No. 9 Sword Forging Hall. There were only a few sword forging masters in the Nameless Sword sect, his motive was simply too obvious. Fortunately, everyone's eyes were bright and did not fall for his trick. Moreover, they volunteered to come to the Discipline Hall to testify for our No. 9 Sword Forging Hall. You are indeed worthy of being the disciples of the Nameless Sword sect. You are upright and upright. You know right from wrong. Chapter 37-43, Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning? Yun Chuzhou's words once again caused a huge uproar. Someone immediately whispered, this Yun Chuzhou is right. No. 9 Sword Forging Hall always receives the worst food, and you have to go for every meal. You won't give them any more. I also saw Zhuge Dong wolfing down meat buns this morning. One look and you can tell that he hasn't eaten meat in a long time. How pitiful. That's right. Otherwise, this Yun Chuzhou wouldn't have beaten up that Zhang Jun this morning. Fuck, he really deserves a beating. If they didn't mistreat the No. 9 Sword Forging Hall, would I not have broken through after so long? These people had completely forgotten how they had treated Yun Chuzhou and the others coldly this morning. At this moment, they wished that they could quickly draw a line with Manager Fan and the others so that they could be worthy of being upright and righteous. Zhuge Dong was already dumbfounded. Emma, although junior sister Yun's words sounded like the truth, it was originally just a simple deduction of ore and food. How did it become a plot against the sword pool? Moreover, she had let him eat meat buns in the morning for the sake of showing it to others. Also, weren't those people watching them coldly in the morning? Why did they help them to blame Manager Fan now? How did junior sister Yun do it? Hall Master Zhuge was not any better in the crowd. He listened to the discussions of the crowd with his mouth agape, feeling that everything had become unreal. Manager Tian and Manager Fan naturally would not admit defeat like this. They cried out in snot and tears of injustice. Yun Chuzhou points at 2 people to shout sternly, Wei, you are innocent? Let me ask you, did you send No. 9 Forging Sword Hall a substandard or? Did you mistreat the food of No. 9 Sword Forging Hall? Right and wrong have their own judgments. Are you not afraid of being struck by lightning? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Boom. A thunder heavily struck on the protection of the great array above. Everyone was shocked. If the sect protecting formation was not activated, the direction of the lightning would have been in the direction of Manager Tian and Manager Fan. What did this mean? It meant that the 2 of them had really done something wicked. At that moment, everyone was filled with righteous indignation. They did not care about Master Ouyang and the other high-ranking officials. They threw rotten fruits and eggs at the two of them. They wished that they could kill the two scourges directly. Although they also hated Yun Chuzhou previously, that kind of hatred should be called hate, not hate. However, it was different for Manager Tian and Manager Fan. Yun Chuzhou clearly said that it was because of them that there were more than 10,000 swords missing in the sword pool. That was why they couldn't break through, that was why they didn't understand the sword intent. It was all their fault. As for whether they admitted it or not, it was no longer important. After all, the heavenly lightning was about to strike them. What else could they say? Manager Tian and Manager Fan did not dare to raise their spiritual energy shields and could only allow those things to fall on them. They would never have dreamed that things would turn out like this. How did Yun Chuzhou make such a ruckus and turn them into criminals of the Nameless Sword sect? The two of them looked at Elder Wan for help. They were both Elder Wan's men, and Hall Master Zhuge had followed Elder Wan's instructions to make things difficult for them. At this point in time, he should at least say something, right? Unfortunately, Elder Wan did not even look at them. His expression was solemn, and it was unknown what he was thinking about. The two of them could not help but feel a little disappointed. However, when they thought about the fact that the matter had not been decided, Elder Wan would not ignore them. Moreover, they would only be abusing their power at most. They really did not have any designs on the sword pool, and they believed that the punishment would not be too severe. Chapter 3744 felt that it was awesome. Of course, not everyone present was led into the pit by He Xinjiu. Many people knew that Yun Chuzhou was using this as an excuse to make a scene. Manager Tian and Manager Fan had indeed treated No. 9 Forging Sword Hall harshly, but the consequences were not as severe as she had said. There were even more than 10,000 swords missing. This was utter nonsense. But on the other hand, the atmosphere of the Nameless Swords sect should be rectified. After all, the Sword Forging Hall was an extremely important department of the Nameless Swords sect. Even if there were personal grudges, they should not use things like sword forging as a means of revenge. Master Ouyang was even clearer in his heart. However, he was just worried that he had no excuse to keep Yun Chuzhou, thus, he took the opportunity to say, "I will send people to thoroughly investigate this matter. As for the punishment of Yun Chuzhou and the others, we will announce it again after the matter has been investigated. Everyone, disperse." When everyone heard Master Ouyang's words, they all scolded Manager Tian and Manager Fan for a while before dispersing in twos and threes. Master Ouyang then looked at Yun Chuzhou and said with a complicated expression, "You should also go back first and wait for the notice." Yun Chuzhou nodded obediently and said mysteriously, "Master Ouyang, don't forget to fish. These two are just small shrimps." Master Ouyang frowned slightly. He originally thought that Yun Chuzhou's previous words about small shrimps were just to create momentum. Could it be that she was serious? Were there really spies from other forces behind these two people? After Yun Chuzhou finished speaking, her left hand dragged the dumbfounded Zhuge Dong and her right hand dragged the dazed Hall Master Zhuge, followed by the dizzy Zhuge Nan, Zhuge 11, and Zhuge Bei as they left the discipline hall. The reason why she added the last sentence was to prevent anyone from speaking on behalf of Manager Tian and Manager Fan. Now, even if their backer wanted to plead for them, they would have to think twice, because if they didn't do it right, they would be suspected of being a spy. This guy gave himself a 360-degree thumbs up with no blind spots. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Initially, she thought that there was really no way to survive this time. She didn't expect that she would suddenly think of the matter of the bystanders talking about Manager Fan and Manager Tian being on good terms. With just a little bit of play, the situation had become like this. She felt that she was awesome. When she passed by the canteen, Yun Chuzhou swaggered in. At that moment, the canteen was preparing lunch in a hurry. Because He Xinjiu had sounded the heaven-shaking drum, they had returned to the canteen. When the canteen people saw He Xinjiu, their hearts skipped a beat. What was this wretched girl doing here? Manager Fan and Zhang Jun of the canteen had already been detained by the disciplinary hall. Therefore, when the canteen people saw Yun Chuzhou, they could not help but feel a little apprehensive. Although they did not know the outcome of the investigation, Manager Fan and Zhang Jun would definitely be punished. However, it seemed that this little girl who beat them up would not do anything. What the hell? Yun Chuzhou glanced at the crowd. Although the culprit is that Manager Fan, all of you are also involved. Tell me, if I report all of you now, will I arrest all of you as their accomplices? The people in the canteen almost fainted from anger. This Yun Chuzhou was really too mean. She was a naked threat. If she went to show off, even if they wouldn't be convicted, it would still be very annoying, okay? Besides, what if they were wrongly convicted? One of the chefs, who was more flexible, said carefully, "Junior Sister Yun, do you have any instructions? As long as we can do it, you can tell us." Chapter 37:45 had only cooked 20 dishes. Yun Chuzhou looked at him with admiration. "You're quite perceptive. Don't worry, when I'm successful in the future, I'll definitely promote you." "Well, in the future, I'll be in charge of taking the dishes from the number 9 sword forging hall. I like to sleep late and I'm also greedy. So, every 3 days, you'll send a meal to the number 9 sword forging hall. It's a combination of meat, vegetables, color, fragrance, and taste. Can you do that?" The people from the cafeteria looked at each other. Did they dare to refuse? This guy was clearly threatening them. Moreover, the situation was still unclear. They really did not want to cause any more trouble, so they all nodded and agreed. Yun Chuzhou sneered in her heart. Sometimes, it was not possible to reason with them properly. It was better to use some means. After this guy threatened the people in the canteen, he brought the dumbfounded Zhuge 5 back to the number 9 sword forging hall. Yun Chuzhou put the steamed buns and egg custard on the stone table and said with a smile, "Are you all hungry? Have breakfast. It will take a while for lunch to be delivered." Zhuge Bei gave Yun Chuzhou a thumbs up. "Junior Sister Yun, I, Zhuge Bei, have never submitted to anyone. Today, I submit to you. I didn't expect you to help us take revenge after just a few boobies. Damn it, that Tian guy has been giving us a lot of grief over the past few years. Today is really a relief." "That's right, Junior Sister Yun. Although what you said is the truth, how did it change from your mouth? This time, I think that Manager Tian and Manager Fan will not end well. It's really a relief." Zhuge Nan echoed. "Senior Brother Dong, Junior Sister Yun, quickly tell us what happened this morning." Zhuge 11 asked curiously. "Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. Zhuge Dong immediately told them what happened this morning. As he told them, he sighed in his heart. He originally thought that today was a monstrous disaster. He didn't expect that it would end up with such a pleasant surprise. Could it be that Junior Sister Yun deliberately knocked on the heaven-shaking drum? Was it not an accident? Just as everyone was chatting and laughing, Hall Master Zhuge slammed the stone table. "Enough. It was just an opportunistic trick. Hurry up and eat, then work. Yun Chuzhou, you are in charge of cleaning the swords in the storeroom today. Don't go out and stir up trouble again. If you continue to act like this, you won't be so lucky every time. There will be a day when you are unlucky." Zhuge Dong and the other 3 shrunk their necks and looked at Yun Chuzhou with a comforting look. Then, they quickly ate. Yun Chuzhou was still smiling on the surface, but in her heart, she was cursing. No wonder this Zhuge Zhongyuan was ostracized. He wouldn't say anything nice either. He was really a smelly and hard rock. After breakfast, Zhuge Dong and the others went to the front yard to practice their swords. Hei Xinjiu finished cleaning the bowls and chopsticks. Then, she hummed a tune and went to the storeroom to wipe the swords. These swords were different from the swords Yun Chuzhou had seen in the past. Hei Xinjiu could not tell exactly how they were different. However, she knew that they were different from the swords in the world. If they were the same as the swords in the world, the Nameless Sword sect would not need to spend so much effort to set up the sword forging hall. They could just go to the world and buy them. Hei Shinjo had only wiped a few swords when the staff of the canteen came to deliver the food eagerly. Junior sister Yun, due to the lack of time, we only cooked 20 dishes and only prepared 5 main dishes. You can make do with them first. We will send them to you later tonight, the handyman who delivered the food said carefully. He was afraid of offending this great aunt. Zhuge Dong and the others were dumbfounded. Only 20 dishes. Only 5 main dishes. They usually only had steamed buns with vegetables, okay? Chapter 37-46 Results. Yun Chujo was very calm. She waved her hand and said, although it's not much, it's still okay. Do it well tonight, understand? The servant answered in fear and trepidation and ran away. Zhuge Dong and the others looked at Yun Chujo in disbelief. This junior sister Yun was simply a god. She only used one morning to solve their problem of 5 years. As they had just finished their breakfast not long ago, Yun Chujo and the others did not eat lunch and continued to work. In the evening, the canteen indeed sent an even more sumptuous meal. The food was so sumptuous that their mouths were full of oil. It had been a long time since they had eaten such sumptuous food. Hall Master Zuja's expression was a little complicated, but he did not say anything. After eating, he returned to his room. Seeing that Hall Master Zhuge had left, Zhuge Bei said with a cheeky smile, Junior sister Yun, you can sit here. I'll help you wash the dishes. Yun Chujo was happy to be free, so she didn't stop him and allowed Zhuge Bei to flatter her. After washing the dishes, Zhuge Bei came to Yun Chujia's side and asked in a low voice, Junior sister Yun, did you intentionally or unintentionally sound the sky-shaking drum? Yun Chujo blinked her eyes. Guess. Zhuge Bei, if he had known this would happen, he would not have washed the dishes for her. The few of them chatted and laughed. After this incident, they felt that the distance between them had become much closer. The north, south, east, and west had also sincerely accepted this new junior sister. The 5 of them chatted and laughed for a while before returning to their rooms to rest. Yun Chujo washed up briefly and lay on the bed, wondering how things would develop. She didn't think that Master Ouyang and the sect's higher-ups were muddle-headed. There was a high chance that they wouldn't completely believe her words. However, Manager Tian and Manager Fan wouldn't have a good ending. This fellow thought of the heavenly thunder that had descended today, but he still didn't understand when his jinx skill would be effective. Then, this fellow thought of the pretty boy. Sigh, he did not know where the pretty boy had gone, or if he was in danger. They were even more miserable than Cowherd and Weaver Girl. After staying together for a few days, they would have to separate. He did not know when they would be able to stay together for a long time. Thinking of the pretty boy, this fellow thought of Guai Chao, who had prevented her and the pretty boy from having sex, and immediately scolded Guai Chao again. Guai Chao was already used to it. In any case, as long as the little girl thought of that fiend, 8 out of 10 times, she would think of having sex and then scold it. It had to be said that this little girl's thoughts were too impure. Why did she always think of having sex? After 2 days, the higher-ups finally came to a conclusion. Not only did Manager Tian and Manager Fan use their power to seek revenge for their personal grudges, they also used their power for personal gain. Over the past few years, they had often used it to benefit themselves. However, the two refused to admit that they were spies. In the end, they confiscated their property, gave them 100 strokes of the cane, and were expelled from the Nameless Sword sect. Of course, after some investigation, they also found some of their minions. They also dealt with them according to the size of their crimes. The sword pool quickly sent a qualified or to the number 9 forging sword hall. The north, south, east, and west were very happy. This way, they would definitely be able to complete their mission this month. Yun Chujo had already expected such a result. However, she felt that it was not enough. She should at least find the miscellaneous office to repair the dilapidated number 9 sword forging hall. In fact, this guy was guilty. After all, she had broken the gate of the number 9 sword forging hall. The number 9 sword forging hall had been running for its life. Chapter 3747, Sword Hall of the Lower House. Yun Chujo was thinking of renovating the number 9 sword forging hall, or at the very least, installing a new gate. Thus, she greeted Hall Master Zhuge and slowly walked out of the number 9 sword forging hall. Ever since the heaven-shaking drum incident, this fellow had hardly left the house. Therefore, after a while, this fellow realized that she seemed to have become a famous person of the nameless sword sect. On the way, everyone who saw her pointed at her and talked about her heroic deeds. Those who had been fooled by the guy realized that they had been tricked by him after a few days. They looked at her with dissatisfaction. Of course, Hei Shinjo did not care about that. Moreover, the guy even waved his claws to greet the crowd. Those people were both annoyed and afraid of her. This guy could turn white into black with his mouth. It wouldn't do any good to offend her. It was better to stay away from her. Therefore, under the complicated gazes of the crowd, Hei Shinjo went to the Miscellaneous Affairs Hall of the lower house. Manager Yu of the Miscellaneous Affairs Hall saw Yun Chujo. He squeezed out a smile and asked her what was the matter. Manager Yu, our number 9 sword forging hall is really too dilapidated. Can you help us repair it? There's no hurry for anything else. Anyway, help us to install the gate first, Yun Chujo said straightforwardly. Manager Yu agreed readily and promised to immediately arrange for the miscellaneous servants to come and repair it. Yun Chujo didn't expect things to be so smooth. She thanked Manager Yu and hopped out of the Miscellaneous Affairs Hall. This fellow thought that if he went back just like that, he would definitely be detained in the backyard by Hall Master Zhuge. Therefore, he rolled his eyes and did not return to the number 9 forging sword hall. Instead, he wandered aimlessly in the lower house to enjoy the scenery. When this fellow was wandering aimlessly, he heard the sound of weapons colliding. Moreover, he could see several flashes of light in the distance. This fellow immediately became spirited and hopped over. When he got close, Hei Shinjo realized that the sound was coming from a large courtyard. The courtyard was surrounded by tall walls. There was a pitch-black plaque on the front door with the words, Sword Hall of the Lower House, written on it. Hei Shinjo swaggered into the courtyard to watch the fun, but she was stopped by the handyman guarding the door. The two handymen were probably worried about Hei Shinjo, so they were polite. Junior sister Yun, only outer disciples are qualified to enter the Sword Hall of the Lower House, so please go back. Yun Chujo blinked. I'm not going in. Can I peek through the door? The two handymen, was there a difference between looking through the door and looking through the door? Junior sister Yun, please don't make things difficult for us. Please go back. Seeing that the two of them were determined, Yun Chujo could only leave in embarrassment. However, this guy wandered behind the sword hall of the lower academy. When he saw the towering tree in the courtyard, his eyes rolled and he had an idea. This guy looked around and saw that no one was paying attention to him. He took off his spirit-concealing ring and jumped onto the wall with the tip of his toes. Using the cover of the tree branches, he looked into the courtyard. He saw that there were about 100 people in the courtyard. They were all wearing outer sect disciples' clothing and were practicing their swordsmanship with swords in their hands. A middle-aged man stood in front of the disciples. He was obviously the person who taught them swordsmanship. Yun Chujo narrowed her eyes. When she saw the middle-aged man's aquiline nose and saw that he looked somewhat similar to Elder Wan, she thought to herself, could this person be related to Elder Wan? Chapter 3748 revealed a secret. Yun Chujia's interest quickly shifted to the swordsmanship practiced by the outer sect disciples. She sighed in her heart. As expected of the nameless sword sect that specialized in swordsmanship. This swordsmanship. What the fuck? Yun Chujo curled her lips in disdain. In her opinion, the swordsmanship of these outer sect disciples was flashy and unreal. It was far inferior to her chicken slaughtering swordsmanship. However, it was not that there were no redeeming points. Occasionally, one or two moves would be used for reference. This fellow was puzzled. The moves that old man Ouyang used that day could be said to be extremely exquisite. Why were the sword techniques that these outer sect disciples learned so poor? However, this fellow quickly figured it out. After all, these were all outer sect disciples. Of course, it was impossible for them to come into contact with the core sword techniques of the sect. Otherwise, there would be no distinction between outer sect disciples and inner sect disciples. After a while, the middle-aged man coughed. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stood up respectfully. The middle-aged man glanced at everyone. Let's call it a day. Let's go. The disciples bowed. Yes, Martial Uncle Wan. Yun Chujia's heart skipped a beat. As expected, he was also surnamed Wan. However, she did not know what kind of person this man surnamed Wan was. The crowd left in twos and threes. However, two disciples didn't leave. Instead, they stood respectfully in front of Uncle Master Wan. Yun Chuzhou narrowed her eyes. These two people looked familiar to her. It seemed that they had helped Manager Fan to perjure himself in front of the canteen. Could they be Elder Wan's people? What's that Yun Chuzhou doing these few days? Uncle Master Wan asked gloomily. That stinky girl hasn't left the number 9 sword forging hall these few days. Those useless people from the canteen will deliver the food every 2 days. They practically treat that stinky girl as their ancestor. Uncle Master Wan, do you need us to deliberately pick a fight with that stinky girl? Doesn't she have a good mouth? I don't believe that we can't handle her. One of the disciples said with a pout. Uncle Master Wan frowned slightly. Have you forgotten what I said? Just keep an eye on her every move and don't act rashly. The disciple who spoke replied embarrassedly. The other disciple said tentatively, Uncle Master Wan, that stinky girl beat up senior brother Pengcheng before and hurt Manager Tian and Manager Fan a few days ago. Are we going to let her off just like that? Uncle Master Wan snorted coldly, you don't need to worry about that. Sooner or later, she will be taught a lesson. Just keep an eye on her. Also, keep an eye on the 5 people from the number 9 sword forging hall, especially that Zhuge Zhongyuan. If there's any movement, report to me immediately. Do you hear me? The two disciples didn't dare to say anything more and agreed respectfully. Uncle Master Wan took out 2 porcelain bottles and handed them to them. They were probably medicinal pills. The two disciples couldn't help but express their gratitude and respectfully sent Uncle Master Wan off. Senior Brother Luo, with this converging spirit pill, our cultivation will be twice the result with half the effort. Why don't we head to the sword pool to cultivate now? Junior Brother Yu, what you said makes sense. Let's go, well head to the sword pool now. The two of them left the sword hall of the lower house excitedly. They were probably heading to the sword pool. Yun Chuzhou narrowed her eyes. She did not expect that she would learn of such a piece of news out of curiosity. That Elder Wan was really petty. Was he planning to fight to the death with her? As an elder of a sect, was he not afraid of embarrassing himself by making things difficult for a shrimp like her? You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.